With the very original "Live Long and Prosper." How
on this cat. He's a bad apple. Saw the look of disbelief from the fans. They cried. With the open challenge, anybody can step up.
Beat somebody that matters. And then you started following around Buddy Matthews. And then you started following around Buddy Matthews. A name that strikes fear into the hearts of his opponents. Hey, how's his ankle doing, by the way? Oh, that's right. I don't give a shit. Hey, how's his ankle doing, by Hey, how's his yeah? Hey, how's his ankle doing, by the way? Hey, how's his ankle doing, by the way? Oh, that's right. I don't give a shit. Oh, that's right. I don't give a shit.
Ultimately be her final night with the organization. Attack the president. Attack the president of the company. That led to her dismissal from Stardom.
Yes. Well, if you're going to go out in a blaze of glory. That was
Moxley just clocked Davis with a belt.
and him, Marina, you were like a bad dose of the clap. I don't know how you got here, but I'm gonna need you to get out of here.
Tony, что такое? What? Do you need some more milk? Or would you like me to get your girlfriend some more flowers?
I need you to piss off, because when me and Citrus Boy meet you in that four-poster, you're gonna be in some deep shit.
I'm gonna be in deep shit.
That's right. I'm gonna be in deep shit.
Not worth it. Not worth it.
I'm gonna be in the. I'm gonna be in
Not worth
deep
it. Hey,
shit.
not worth it. Not worth it.
Physique Taz. He was the talk of wrestling when he removed his pants.
Yes, and the only time I heard that kind of a pop when someone moved their pants is Shivani in the announcer's room. You saw it?
Look at this guy. He's got people following him everywhere. What's going on? She giving him money? Oh, no, that's not. Don't touch that. That's not.
For Andrade El Idolo as this main event battle continues live on Dynamite. Don't go anywhere.
And him! Marina, you were like a bad... And him! Marina, you were like a bad dose of the clap. I don't know how you got here, but I'm gonna need you to get out of here.
Tony, что такое? What? Do you need some more milk? Or would you like me to get your girlfriend some more flowers?
I need you to piss off, because when me and Citrus Boy...
The eyes on this cat. He's a bad apple.
With the open challenge, anybody can step up.
And then you started following around Buddy Matthews. A name that strikes fear into the hearts of his opponents. Hey, how's his ankle doing, by the way? Oh, that's right. I don't give a shit. Hey, how's his ankle doing, by the way? Oh, that's right. I don't give a shit.
Attacked the president of the company. That led to her dismissal from Stardom.
Yes, well, if you're going to go out in a blaze of glory. That was...
Moxley just clocked Davis with a belt.
And him! Marina, you were like a bad dose of the clap. I don't know how you got here, but I'm gonna need you to get out of here.
Tony, что такое? What? Do you need some more milk? Or would you like me to get your girlfriend some more flowers?
1,000 individual plaintiffs. Thank you. Where the suits accuse Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Snapchat of engineering features that make their apps nearly impossible for kids to put down, like infinite scroll, autoplay videos, frequent notifications, and recommendation algorithms, leading in some cases to depression, eating disorders, self-harm, and even suicide. Wow. So Snapchat and TikTok remain defendants in other lawsuits. The plaintiffs are seeking monetary damages as well as changes to the way social media apps are designed. The trial, starting on Tuesday in LA, will give a rare look inside how the most popular and powerful social media platforms operate. Jurors will be presented with thousands of pages of internal documents, including research on children conducted by the companies, expert witnesses, and the testimony of the teenage plaintiff, identified as KGM, who says her excessive use of social media led to mental health problems. Wow. Now let's see what Zuckerberg said. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg and Adam Mosseri, the head of Instagram, are also set to take the stand in the trial, which is expected to last several weeks. The public is going to know for the first time what social media companies have done to prioritize their profits over safety of our kids, said Bergman, who represents KGM and other plaintiffs. The tech companies argue that there's no clinical diagnosis of addiction to social media, and that no direct link between using social media and mental health problems has been proved. They say they've rolled out safety features for kids in recent years, including parental controls, guardrails on who can collect teen accounts, and time limits. They also cite First Amendment, saying that just as people's speech is protected from government censorship, the decisions that social media companies make about the content are also a type of protected speech, an argument the Supreme Court has affirmed. Hold on, let me think about that here. So they're saying that just as people's speech is protected from government censorship, the decisions that social media companies make about their content is a type of protected speech. Okay, I can see that. Okay, I can definitely see that, because they're basically saying that everybody has a right to free speech in their own content. And so they're not going to limit that. I agree with that. Supreme Court has affirmed that. All right. Both Meta and YouTube parent Google said in statements that the allegations in the lawsuits are baseless. The lawsuits misportray our company and the work we do every day to provide young people with safe, valuable experiences online. Meta said in a statement, despite the snippets of conversations or cherry-picked quotes that plaintiffs' counsel may use or paint an intentionally misleading picture of the company, we're proud of the progress we've made. We stand by our record of putting teen safety first, and we'll keep making improvements. Stand by their record of putting teen safety first. So are they saying that teen safety is more important than making money in this business? I don't know if I believe that statement, but this is such an interesting question. So basically, social media companies are being sued for making their apps too engaging, too or possibly addictive. But isn't that just good business? Doesn't that mean that they're achieving what they want? Isn't that what they want? Don't they want people to be addicted to this? So where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line? And where do you draw the line? And is contributing to mental health problems among the youth. Because also, I'm not saying that it's not, but that's the interesting part of this is how would somebody go about litigating this to prove that? Yeah, and the fact that it's targeted against or children, like if they're able to prove that as well, they probably really have some. Well, clearly they do. They do. And people are taking this serious because if you've been on TikTok, especially, it's hard to get off it. Once you're on that thing, something else will pop up, and the algorithms are so good. They know what you like. But the thing of it is, the more time you spend on TikTok, the better the algorithm learns you and then makes it harder for you to get off because it'll just show you more of what you like. But is that good business practice, or are companies taking this too far? Are social media companies taking this too far? I'll make a distinction, to bring it back to Temu. I see where he's going with this. If he was trying to make a similar argument, although Temu is a shopping app. So this would be like Amazon trying to sue Amazon and saying that they made things too addictive, shopping. But let's not forget what's hard to separate here. Shopping contains its own dopamine spikes in and of itself. Like buying things feel good. Have you ever heard of retail therapy? Like that's what people say. Like when you go shopping, go have some retail therapy. Yeah, you go spend some money, you buy some things, and it does feel good, raises your dopamine. But then sometimes you raise it too high, and then later you get home and it spikes. You have buyer's remorse. But that's what that's about. But anyway, that's a difference here in that TikTok is, social media and people, with whatever content trying to be engaged with, they're trying to sell you specific goods. Individuals are. So you're there to purchase something. It's an e-commerce website. A little bit different.
So Jesse Ortiz has a good question, which is if Temu were an American app, would they be held liable? So effectively, if Amazon were if the Amazon app were effectively a slot machine that messed with your dopamine and also refused to have dark mode.
Well, you can't compel a company to have dark mode. Like they at best they could be made to make their product or their app accessible to everyone. But you can't dictate how that is. So you can't say it would be dark. Maybe it is dark mode. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's reducing, the light or on the app or presenting it in a different way, offering alternatives. So would they be held liable? It's honestly, it's still going to be tough to say. And I don't know if you can say that they'd be held liable to be too addictive. I'm not certain that you could prove that, even if it was in the United States.
I think that's why I brought up the case that's happening in the city we live right now.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should try to get some media badges for, because I think what happens in that case will signify the liability an app doesn't have.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because the way that these are decided, because TikTok has already had these cases, but they've settled privately. So there's not really a precedent here. But it'll be interesting to see what happens after this because, things could change. There could be new legislation. Who knows?
So we've got 3 just real good paid questions, starting with Dorian Q 7H. What rights do I have as a father to keep my children away from my ex's new boyfriend? He's been abusing my daughter, and I'm doing all I can the legal way to protect her.
Now, Dorian, man, first of all, I feel that's an awful situation to be in, especially with, child abuse. So again, listen, I want to say I am not your lawyer. I'm not giving you advice. I do feel for you in this position. So I'll just talk about the legal elements here and try to educate you on what's going on. And, hopefully you can get something from that and do with it as you please. But, being a single father who went through a separation and a very, very long child custody battle, I know, and being a lawyer, I know a great deal about family law here. I would say, just as a father, not even a lawyer, as a father, like man to man, if somebody were abusing my child, I would go to the authorities immediately, report this to the police immediately, and have the police go and remove my child from the danger. If, and this is my situation, if my child's mother had an ex who was abusing my child, I would go to the authorities, have them show up as not to, make an already tense situation worse, but have them deal with it. And I think that is probably the smartest thing to do. But that would be the first thing, is to stop the abuse. And then that would also presumably help for whatever legal recourse somebody was going to take after that. Because if a child is being abused in one parent's home, the child should then probably go live with the other parent for safety. So that's where I would explore things. And Dorian, if you want to speak further about this offline, I'm happy to do that too, or to email. But hopefully, I've given you enough, here that can help you kind of decide, which way you're going to go, what you're going to do with this. But my heart goes out to you, and I'm going to start covering more cases like this for fathers' rights, because obviously I have a sweet spot or a soft spot for that. So hopefully I can help or provide education any way I can. Oh, and yes, another thing too, make sure you get a police report, or anybody, not necessarily you, anybody. If somebody were in this situation, their child were being abused, I would say report it to the police and make sure to get a police report, because that's going to help.
The eyes on this cat. He's a bad apple. With the open challenge.
So many emotions in there.
Anybody can step up.
Before I get to
And then you started following.
That's a situation that can be really, really difficult, especially like for a father when there's somebody else putting hands on your child, and emotions can run high. Have to remember, got to do things the right way. Let the authorities have it. Don't want to make things worse. That's a tough situation. Okay, sorry about that. Let's go to Matthias. How long does it take to become a lawyer on average? And do you ever find moral dilemmas in the field, or is that a stereotype associated with it, needing to defend unsavory people? Oh, Matthias, these are great questions. Glad to have you. On average, it takes 7 years to become a lawyer, or technically 8. You don't want to count passing the bar, depending. But anyway, it's 4 years of undergraduate and then 3 years of law school to earn your.
Lost David. Sometimes his browser crashes. I think it's the RAM or something like that. He usually just has to do a quick reset and then he'll be back. I'm just going to add a little technical difficulties so that I don't have to keep reminding it. He's still in the studio, which is not normally what happens. Okay, he's left the studio. So I haven't been showing myself on screen just because I have a messy, but I think I have to show on screen anyway. Just those are all boxes for Christmas decorations, because the Christmas decorations are still out. Don't judge me, I'm busy. Thank you very much, Matthias. We're going to get him back. Also, I think the stat, and David can correct me when he gets back, I believe the stat on becoming a lawyer just on not just amount of time. Like if you're exceptional like David and you could just take the LSAT on a whim, like most people probably won't pass the LSAT on a whim. But if you start law school, I believe the stat is from year 1 to the end is something like 1 in 3 actually make it to the end of law school. And then I believe it's similar or close to half the amount of people who take the bar that pass the bar, depending on the state. So it's not just how long would it be if I started tomorrow? It would be, how long would it be if I started tomorrow and I did all of the work and survived? So I would tack on extra years that don't really account for David's experience. If I were trying to become a lawyer starting tomorrow, I would assume it would take me 10 years. Although if I were trying to become a lawyer starting tomorrow, I would pull a Kim Kardashian and buy my way into a law firm and then clerk for that law firm. And then I'll never have to take the bar. And as far as I'm aware, I think I still have to have a law degree to do that, but then you can work backward. So he's on his way back in. His computer crashed. Thank you very much, Angelique. We should have a catchy tune for the "We'll Be Right Back." Just do. Joe R 860. He stopped time. A wrestling historian. Great to see you. Thank you for coming. David is in the studio. There he is.
I'm back.
Are we? That's what it is. That's
I'm
fine.
back.
That's.
Okay.
I was ready. So we'll get back to Matthias's question.
Yes, please.
Something I was trying to bring up is how long it would take you when you say 8 years, including the bar. That assumes you survive, or you don't get held, or you don't get held back, or you don't. That assumes you do all the work perfectly, which not everyone can do. And I'll tell you can take it from there.
Thank you very much for covering, Steve. Technical difficulties. Apologize. It's the first run. We got it. We're back. Matthias. So, yeah, the quickest way you could do it, you go through high school, then you go through 4 years of college, 3 years of law school, and then you could take the bar right after that. So that would be the quickest in just over 7 years. However, that doesn't always happen. Even for myself, I did 4 years of college, then I had a year off. I worked at Columbia University. I managed a cognitive neuroscience lab. And then the next year started at Harvard Law School. And then, practiced law, top law firm in Chicago, and then became a professional wrestler. And then now, still back practicing law. So the thing of it is, it depends, because law school is something, it can be tough, but it can also be really enjoyable. I really enjoyed it. But there's plenty of people who it's a difficult process, and it might take them a little bit longer to get through. So I would say the average time, I don't know, 8, 9 years, something like that. Definitely, should be like under 10. Some people take longer, but I would say on average, that's what it is. But I love this question here. Do you ever find moral dilemmas in the field, so needing to defend unsavory people? Yeah, that can come up. But it depends on your mindset. So like for me, I always consider myself a criminal defense attorney because for whatever reason, I usually just side with the defendant, because in a lot of the cases that I had, when I started out, for example, I started out first defending clients when I was a 3L at Harvard Law School in Boston. And I got to work at the public defender's office in Roxbury, Massachusetts. I had my own caseload. They let me be a public defender in Boston, in Roxbury as a 3L. So before I even graduated law school. And I used to do a lot of juvenile clients. And I remember one that I had in particular. I'll give him a shout out, Jay. He knows who he is. I will give his last name. But anyway, he was a good kid. He fell in kind of with a bad crowd, just trying to fit in, and got caught up in some things and charged with something that was going to go on his record, permanently as a juvenile, where they were, thinking about trying to charge him as an adult. And so the thing of it is, I needed to step in. He couldn't afford a lawyer. And so he was appointed a public defender, or he could have this third-year law student from Harvard Law School. They went with me. And my whole point was, did the kid do something wrong? Yeah, he was with some kids. And, technically, was he guilty? It depends. Was he guilty of the charge they said? I don't think so. Was he guilty of something? Yes. So it was a matter of, did I agree with what he did? No. But at the same time, I understand how, especially a kid at that age could be pressured into something. And, he was young. So anyway, I didn't want this young man to have his life ruined and get something major on his record when really it wasn't that serious. So I kind of always look at it as, if I have to defend somebody that I don't agree with what they do, I want to make sure that it's the appropriate charge, because a lot of times people are overcharged due to race. And actually, that's what was happening in this particular situation with this young juvenile I was speaking about. He was African-American, and it seemed like it may have played in a little bit. I don't know if it did or it didn't. But either way, I wanted to make sure that they didn't ruin this kid's life when they didn't have to. Yeah. But yeah, sometimes you have to defend unsavory people, but you can always turn a case down. That's the thing. If I didn't feel like I could totally do my job and be objective, like if I felt like my personal opinions were going to cloud, my work and prevent me from advocating for my client zealously, I would pass on it and say, I'm sorry, I'm not the right attorney for this. However, like I said, I don't mind it if I see an angle there or some way I can help and just make sure, that the legal process works like it's supposed to. Because again, like being a criminal defense attorney, I'm not trying to get my client off, of the hook or whatever it is. Technically, as a criminal defense attorney, I'm trying to make the prosecutors prove their case. You say my client did this, prove it. Now, you say my client did X, prove it. My client probably did W. He didn't do X. So I'm going to defend him and tell you he did not do X. And good luck trying to beat me with that. I know my client didn't do X. My client did W. If you know what I mean. Okay.
And also prove it under the rules.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And prove it under the rules, because I'm really good with that in the federal rules of evidence. So better do your homework before you go up against me.
And that's a video on our legal board specifically about why it's important guilty people get a good defense.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we'll definitely talk about that then. I'll touch on that briefly, but it is extremely important that guilty people get a good defense, because otherwise, this is where the term like railroaded comes in. Like somebody could do something that's minor, but get everything thrown at them, get the maximums. Why is that? Because a lot of things are in the discretion of the court or the judge or the jury in terms of sentencing guidelines. And it depends on what an individual is charged with. That's the thing, is like you have to make sure that's really what it comes down to. And it being a good prosecutor is you have to make the right charges, only charge what you can prove. And that's where a good defense attorney comes in, where I'm looking at this, I'm waiting. Okay, you charge this, you charge X. X has 5 different elements. They better all be in there. If you got 3 of them, 4 of them, I'm getting them out of this. All right, what else do we have?
Well, we have not a question from Zachary Moore, just $20. So thank you.
Whoa,
You're the best, Zachary Moore.
Whoa, no, yeah, Zachary Moore, you're the best. Thank you for that. I appreciate this. I really do. You know what?
So
there's nothing like people enjoying your work, and I didn't ask for it. Hey, thank you very much, though. Thank you.
2 more super chats. This first one, you and I've talked about offline. Did O.J. Simpson do it? Acquitted? Why? Your opinion. We're going to try our best to do the condensed version, I guess.
I guess I could use this as a teaser for that, but I'll just tell you this. I have a theory on O.J. Simpson that is the O.J. Simpson case that is not what you think. I was in talks and had a documentary coming out about this, and I was going to interview my former professor who was part of O.J. Simpson's defense team, Alan Dershowitz. But the production company and I had different views, and I was working with somebody else and decided I'm just going to make it on my own. However, everybody who has heard the theory came in thinking one thing and have unanimously told me, you know what? I didn't know where you're going with this. I wasn't sure anybody could change my mind, but you've actually made me consider this, which I think is great because everybody thinks they know exactly what happened. But I'll just say the broad strokes. So I was 14 when this case happened, and I was in intro to law in high school at Larkin High School, Elgin, Illinois. My teacher was Mr. Rodriguez. Shout out to him. He was awesome. But that was my first time in any kind of legal class. I was fascinated by this case. And I remember being 14 years old, O.J. Simpson was seen as, he's the biggest baby face. And then immediately when this happened, everybody just assumed he did it. Oh, he did it. It was a rush to judgment. I mean, he did look pretty guilty. However, can you prove that? Try to charge him with first-degree murder. Okay. Can you prove it, though? They had the evidence to prove it. However, some of the evidence was tainted. There's undeniable proof of that. So, well, first of all, we'll just say this. This is why he was acquitted, is there was tainted evidence. This is aside from my theory or my insight in this. But if you want to know why OJ was acquitted, it was tainted evidence and it was Mark Fuhrman. I mean, it really was. And he was part of potentially planting evidence. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. My theory revolves around the DNA evidence, because this was one of the first cases, definitely the biggest case, where DNA was used, and people, they didn't really know about it that much. This was a new thing. And so it was a big deal. Barry Scheck was great at explaining this on OJ's defense team, but they had to explain to the jurors and, to everybody in the country, into the world, watches basically, how DNA worked, what was going on. And so the police work was terrible at the crime scene. And so on the night of the murder, when police showed up, that morning, they didn't secure the crime scene well. Not all. They left the body out there uncovered. People were walking through the crime scene. They collected all the evidence. They didn't collect O.J. Simpson's blood at the scene that night. Apparently not. So on that day, listen to what I'm telling you, because they allegedly recovered O.J. Simpson's DNA at the scene of the crime, but they did not recover it the night of the crime. Do you know when they recovered it? 3 weeks later. So let me take you through this. The night of the crime, the CSI team comes in there. They do the crime scene. They collect all the evidence. Apparently, they don't have any of OJ's blood, at least in the back, because then what I'm getting to is he flies to Chicago right after this. I mean, that was smart. Gets on a plane. I mean, he's cutting it close, but he made it out there. But then they say, "Hey, wait a minute, you got to come back." Allegedly, he's got this cut on his finger. What? I don't know. He says he broke it on a glass. Who knows? But either way, he comes back and he submits for a DNA test. This is what's important, because a day or two after the murders, OJ gets his blood drawn. So they to do the DNA test. They come in though. Well, they drew his blood and put it in a vial. And like if you go to the doctor, they draw your blood on the phlebotomist takes it, and it's in a vial, and it's got this stuff at the bottom, and it's a preservative, right? EDTA. And it looks like some kind of like gum or something, but it's to preserve the blood so they can use it later. So for some reason, the crime scene unit decides to go back to the O.J. Simpson, or to the Nicole Brown Simpson house, and just collect more evidence. 3 weeks later, right? And guess what? This time, when they do that, they found major piece of evidence. They found OJ's blood on the back gate, going to the back. He's cooked. His DNA right there at the crime scene. But most people don't. They just heard that they found that. But wait a minute now. How come it took 3 weeks to find it? How come they didn't find it at the beginning? Was this planted? And then people are going to say, oh, well, they probably just missed it. No, it wasn't planted. Why would you say that? They missed it. They just happened to collect it later. Do you know what was found in that blood? That blood on the back gate? Do you know what was found in that blood? In OJ's blood? His DNA, but EDTA. I think that's what you meant. It's the EDTA, the preservative I was talking about. That was found in the blood on the back gate. EDTA is not made by the human body. That's a preservative. So what does that tell you? The blood on the back gate was taken out of the vial also. I forget what the exact measurements were. Let's say they took 1 ml of OJ's blood in this vial, right, when it left the crime scene. Well, when it was logged into evidence, I think there was only like 0.6 ml left. There was blood missing, an amount missing. Also, the chain of custody was wonky, and Detective Van Hatter personally took the vial and put it in his shirt pocket, and went to the OJ's residence and went a number of places before actually logging this in. I don't know if you know about chain of custody, but that is not how you do it. That is not professional at all. And so, Detective Van Hatter had access to OJ's blood in his pocket with a vial with EDTA. Nothing was collected that night, but then later, OJ's blood with EDTA was found, and the vial was missing blood. Come on, this is too simple. But anyway, that's why he was acquitted. because it was very clear that was planned. Also, the socks. If you haven't heard about the socks, same thing here. There was a video crew that was in OJ's house, and they were recording everything in his house to see what it looked like. Everything was immaculate. Then I believe it was Detective Mark Furman shows up and decides to go in OJ's house, and for whatever reason he went upstairs by himself, and then also he started calling him, "Hey, you gotta come up here, take a look." There's a pair of socks just laying there, right in the middle of the floor. Just they weren't there before. You could see in the video clearly, but now there's this pair of brown socks that OJ allegedly just the whole place is immaculate, but he allegedly strewn about a pair of socks. Yeah. But the trick was when they picked the socks up, they contained blood, OJ's blood. And wait a minute. How did he get blood on there? The thing of it is with this, it was a sock, right? So the blood was on both sides of the sock. But how could that happen? If the blood splashed on OJ during this, his foot would have been in the middle. So how could blood have gone, hit the sock here, if this is his foot, hit this, or splash on this side of the sock and gone through to the other? It couldn't. But I'll tell you how that could happen. If you laid the socks on the floor and took a dropper of blood and dropped it, and so the droplet hit one side of the sock and soaked all the way through. Pretty much explains that. All right, I've said too much on this. You guys got me excited.
That's going to be a very long, full-length video. If anybody listening happens to be both a video editor and a paralegal, that's probably who I would need to help me make that video.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Reach out.
Or help us with a lot. If you're that person and you want to work with us.
Yeah.
The otungaloyer@gmail.com. Zachary Moore, EN5TU, $50.
What?
He is NXT for life. No question. Zachary Moore,
Hey!
if you have a question, regular chat
There you go.
for the question. Also, not Nexus for life. NXT for life.
NXT. Oh, well, hey. Nexus, NXT. We're the Godfather. NXT. You know I built it. Zachary
we now
Moore
have-
really knows that.
We now have 4 super chats and then 1 more emailed legal case. So we're going to move a little quick. AUBBMMA sued my apartment and won 2 months of rent abatement. Defense was they were actively pursuing eviction of the tenant. After I won, they dropped the case. Reason is noise every night in Virginia. And then they won advice. Trying to parse out all the details here.
Yeah, sued my apartment and won 2 months of rent abatement, 2% defense. The defense was they were actively pursuing eviction of the tenant. Okay, but after I won, they dropped the case. Reason is noise every night in Virginia. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure where you want me to go with this, because you sued. Apparently, this individual sued and won, so that's great. The defense was that they were actively pursuing the tenant after I won. They dropped the case. I'm sorry. Your question's not clear to me. I'm trying to figure it out. But the reason is noise every night. So they were pursuing eviction due to high noise levels. I mean, that could be if it was excessive. I would have to know. I don't know if there's police reports. What's involved? I'm sorry. It's kind of vague, but I appreciate you sending this in. Yeah, congratulations on winning your case. I think that's dope. So thank you.
And in general, let us know if the more information we kind of need as to noise, and also noise every night from you or a neighbor,
right? And
then eviction of you or the tenant that's causing the noise. I think those are the 2 things we're trying to suss out. We've got Demon Built Diff. Hey, David, I have a personal question regarding a criminal defense on something. Is there any way I can speak to you regarding it?
Yeah, send an email to the account. What's the account, Steve?
otungaloyer@gmail.com.
Yep. Send an email there, and we'll figure out a way to get in touch. But thank you for coming on and reaching out.
So these next 2 are wrestling related, but also legal related. I'll start with one of our associates, Instagram at a wrestling historian. Thoughts on the trial of Ted DiBiase Jr.?
Shout out to a wrestling historian. I know his accounts well. Tags me all the time. Great photos. Hey, a wrestling historian, hook me up. Give me some good posts lately for me to repost. Especially because, boy, you're covered with the heat right now. Thoughts of the Ted DiBiase Jr. trial. Well, I'm gonna have to catch up on the latest because last I heard he was getting ready to go to trial. I don't know if it started yet or not. I worked with Ted DiBiase Jr. and his brother Brett. They were both cool. They're nice guys. I don't really know what they're into outside of wrestling, or I don't know them at all outside of wrestling. But as far as coworkers and stuff, they're super nice, super just chill, cool guys. Their dad too, $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, cool guys. Here we got the key points. Let's get into this. So, former wrestler Ted DiBiase Jr.'s federal trial for welfare fraud has been continued until February. Okay, so it's continued until February. Thank you, Steve. It's a little tiny. So the trial was halted after the lead defense attorney fell ill. Okay, but a judge denied a request for a mistrial. Wait, fell ill. Okay. DiBiase is accused of misappropriating millions in federal funds intended for needy families in Mississippi. That accusation, not a good one. He has pleaded not guilty to 13 criminal counts, including wire fraud and money laundering. A judge continued. Yeah. So basically, he's being charged with misappropriating funds and took millions of dollars and allegedly bought a home. I don't know if they said he bought a boat, but bought a lot of things for himself. But these are supposed to be for needy families in Mississippi. Let's see, what else do we have here? Yeah, so on January 14th, U.S. District Court Judge Carlton Reeves halted proceedings due to the lead defense attorney in this case falling ill. Hopefully he's all right. The defense attorney. So the defense team requested a mistrial, citing uncertainty over whether lead attorney. Hey, look, I'm here to have fun. If I didn't say this before, this show is about entertainment and education, right? And I'm going to have fun. So they requested a mistrial because the attorney was ill. See, that stuck out to me when I first read this. The attorney was ill. And then I started thinking, at first I was thinking, if it would be the prosecutor, that's interesting. Like if this were a movie, somebody could have slipped him something trying to give him food poisoning. Like Michael Jordan's flu game. But the defense attorney, I wonder if that, I don't want to wonder. But in a hypothetical, or like, this could be a good movie. In a movie, like maybe that's a tactic where the lawyer faked that he was ill and hey, there must be a mistrial. We need a mistrial. There's no way we can find another lawyer. The lawyer's sick. We don't know when he's coming back. Yeah. He's stomach's upset. He's got explosive diarrhea or something. We can't trust him to come back to court. So there has to be a mistrial. Like he has to be close to the restroom. I don't think that's going to work. Yes, of course. And the judge ruled that a mistrial was unnecessary. Not surprising. The federal government supported the court's position. The trial could proceed, asserting DiBiase has capable co-counsel to represent him effectively in Gilbert's absence. So it's continued until February 23rd, 9 a.m. What else? And we talked about that. An interesting part of this is I remember what I heard before is that so Ted Jr.'s brother Brett was allegedly accused of something as well. I don't know how connected it was, but I'm not certain what Brett's charges were, but as I understand it, he already pleaded guilty. Let's see. Okay, but he already pleaded guilty apparently. I wonder how that could impact Ted's trial. Because I don't know how similar the charges were, but hypothetically, or hey, in a movie, there are two brothers, and I'm not saying this is the case here. I don't know. So again, this is in a movie. I'm taking it off the DiBiase's. In a movie, there was two brothers, and they were both charged with something, or they hatched a scheme, and both of them got caught and charged, and one of them pleaded out, took a plea deal. or pled guilty, what does that mean for the other one? Like, is it kind of forcing the hand, or, kind of tipping public perception? I don't know. I don't know. It looks a little spooky for Ted, though. If you ask me, I think, or sorry, not Ted, but no, well, it is. It's Brett in this case. He's already done this. What I'm saying is, I think it. You don't know how this could impact Ted's case, but it could be negative. I don't think it would be positively. Yeah, let's see. So DiBiase is charged with 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and commit theft concerning programs receiving federal funds, 6 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of theft. Yeah. If convicted, DiBiase faces potential prison time on each count. Yeah. But DiBiase is the only one actively contesting the charges. He's one of several people charged, but he's the only one actively contesting the charges. Does that mean the other people? Well, we know his brother pled, presumably that Brett is one of the 7. But as far as the other 5 people, did they also plead guilty, or have their trials not started yet? I'm curious about that, because that's interesting. If 6 of the 7 pleaded guilty, and Ted is pleading not. However, though, it is presumable that he is innocent. Because let's say this: in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty. I do want to say that. So presumably, and as of right now, Ted DiBiase Jr. is innocent. He's presumed innocent until proven guilty. So he is innocent of these charges. And so but I'm saying it just looks it looks away. There's 7 people charged and only one of them pleads not guilty. But then again, what if he really is, wasn't a part of this? Maybe the other 6 were doing this and he had no knowledge of it. I don't know. So this is all just entertaining speculation. But
also,
yes,
I would point out that in the event of criminal conspiracies, let's say, police love to round up anyone who could have been involved in an attempt to threaten them with being charged with conspiracy, to get them to roll over on everybody else. So the fact that he's one of several people charged and he's the only one pleading not guilty, anecdotally, because obviously you still have to have a trial, but anecdotally that does help his case of,
yes,
no, those people did it and they all admitted to doing it.
Right. And that's and I'm not giving legal advice here, but if I was his attorney, I would definitely make sure I pointed out that, he's the only one with a notable name. Like he's got a very, very well-known name and is a public figure, as far as I know, in the people listed. And so that would kind of make sense, in order for them to target the person with the large name, the popular name, to put pressure on that person because they don't want the bad press, to try to get them to, rat on everybody else or whatnot. So I think a lawyer could make a good argument, though, that, in that manner. John Davis, former director of Mississippi Department of Human Services. Don't know who that is. Nancy New. Nope. Zachary New. Nope. Ann McGrew. Nope. Jacob. Sorry, Jacob. And then Brett. Yeah, he's the only other one. It would be his brother, Christy Webb. Yeah, so the DiBiases are the only people, or the only public figures here that I'm aware of. With nationally recognized names. Put it like this: they have the most recognizable last name in this. So I definitely think that could be a point of leverage in a defense. Again, he's presumed innocent.
Yeah. Hayes Kasaki wants to know, wouldn't the other 5 have to testify against Ted to affect him? I don't know if it has to.
They wouldn't have to. No, they would not have to testify against. If they did testify against Ted, depending on what they said, that could be tough. But no, they absolutely do not have to testify against Ted.
They also don't have to testify for him.
No,
it's on the prosecution to prosecute him, just like it's on the defense to defend him.
Right. And so again, there's another case, or another example of this. The prosecution needs to make sure that they have the right charges against Ted. And if they've overcharged him or they've mischarged him and he has a good defense attorney, they can easily prove that this is not the right charge or that there's reasonable doubt here.
So Zachary Moore, again, Thank you so much, Zachary Moore. He meant Nexus, not NXT.
And another 20?
Another 20.
My man, he is Nexus.
I'm not going to talk you out of giving money, but also you could have sent that as a regular comment. I would have put it up. But by all means, if you
hey man, Steve and I, we appreciate the support. Man, we just started doing this, and the feedback has been great. So it's encouraging us to do more. Please let us know how you enjoy it. And thank you very much, Zachary Moore. Thank you for that. Seriously.
And one more super chat. Also, I can't tell from the emoji whether it's an associate or a paralegal. Apologies at Wrestling Culture. What do you think about everything that came out about Velveteen Dream? Did you ever work with Patrick Clark? He was on Tough Enough, the very last season of Tough Enough. And then he would have been the Performance Center around the time you were Raw pre-show and then SmackDown announcer.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with him. Our time overlapped. I never had the occasion to work with him, though. Not in the ring, not even from a backstage capacity. I don't even believe I ever called any of his matches or anything, because he was largely in NXT. Like I've seen him, and even then, like I'm not even sure I've ever seen him work live, to be honest. Maybe, but met each other in passing backstage, just hi, hello. But what do I think about everything that came out about him? I'll be honest, you're gonna have to give me some specifics. We pull like some things up. I don't know.
I can pull some stuff up. I will say the most recent article is based on a tweet, and let's pull it up. It's from Yahoo Sports. Velveteen Dream demands an apology and a return to WWE.
Okay.
And when Wrestling Culture said everything, I did need to point out that there are, as far as I'm aware, 2 distinct cases.
Okay.
Involving Velveteen Dream prior to his release, one of which was he was accused of DMing an underage person that was never proven. Like WWE never, like, he was just off TV for a while and then eventually released, and then WWE never made a statement as to why.
Yeah.
So for him to now demand an apology and be brought back, anyone who's reporting that he was let go for those reasons, as far as I'm aware, that's not actually the case. But the other one was allegedly. Actually, I'm going to read the article because I'm realizing I might have inside. Inside information.
Let me speak on the because I was thinking too what I
heard versus what's in an article.
Yeah, I know what I know about it, but I don't know about it from any articles, so I can't divulge that. But I'll talk about what I can. I will say this though. Okay, so WWE did an investigation which didn't find any evidence. However, one accuser claimed WWE never contacted them. So he was released in 2021 after the allegations against him became public. But was he released because of the allegations? That's my question. I don't know. And that's tricky. That's what would have to be proven, because the other thing is, like, okay, I'll say what I was knowing. What the inside information I had though is, I think he had heat for other reasons though too. Not saying this wasn't the reason they released him. I'm not saying that it very well may have been. However, in addition to this, I was aware he had heat for other things, just backstage, I guess politics, or more so, I don't know that, but for whatever reason, he definitely had some heat there, which WWE could say they were releasing him for whatever they were unhappy with, in regard to that heat, when really it was because of the allegations, and you couldn't really prove either one, because WWE in the contract, as I went through on my video, the contracts, WWE can remove a talent or fire a talent, release a talent for anything or for nothing at all. So could be for these allegations. It doesn't have to be. Could be for nothing. Yeah. So multiple arrests. This slide was Clark wrote, "A lot of you owe me an apology for dragging me through the mud, knowing 5 years later, here I stand still free without a single charge. But I get it. It's very hard for people to admit when they're wrong or malicious, but hey, that's wrestling." I don't know. I don't know what happened here. I don't know if Patrick Clark is clearly So he hasn't been charged. He says without a single charge. So he's never been charged with anything. It probably is unfair to view somebody as having done something that they didn't. I mean, that's not illegal to view somebody like that, but that is unfair. I understand that, and so at least because again, he is innocent until proven guilty.
And he's never been, as far as I can tell, never been charged in a court of law.
Yeah.
Wrestling Culture is specifically asking, I was referring specifically to the allegation involving minors that resulted in Velveteen Dream's release. How do you feel about that situation? And the situation, as far as we understand it, are these two paragraphs, which is he was accused of it, WWE investigated it, said they couldn't find any evidence.
Yeah.
And then an accuser claimed that they were never involved in the investigation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, he was never charged with anything. And so how do I feel about it? I feel he wasn't charged. WWE said they investigated it and didn't find any evidence. So take that for what it means. Presumably then WWE is saying he was not released over that. I don't know. But if they said they didn't find any evidence, it would be weird to then release him after acknowledging they didn't, or release him for that reason after acknowledging they didn't find any evidence. So that's what I'm saying. I would need to see somewhere where WWE stated that was the reason for his release. But generally, WWE they're not in the habit or tradition of giving reasons for the release of talent. That's not how they operate. So I don't know if he's talking legally here, but that would be really hard to prove that he was released over that, even though that likely is the public sentiment.
I would say this. If you look at how he was presented on NXT television in 2019 through 2020, up until he was no longer on that show at all, and then he was released in 2021 when he was, you can draw your own conclusion as to, assuming there's more, like you'll never know the actual reason WWE released him because they're never going to release it. If you had to work backward from what you think that reason is, think of what his upside was in 2019 and 2020, and then think of how much of a downside there'd have to be for them to make the decision they made in 2021.
Okay.
That's what I would tell people to think about while knowing that it's a known unknown.
Right. Yeah. I agree with that. And I'd have to take it off Patrick Clark in this, but I'm going to draw a hypothetical that's just a little bit different. I'm taking this off of Patrick Clark. Say there's a talent in NXT and they're lighting it up. Like, they're getting over down there. Everybody is really high. They're getting a major push, and they're really doing a great job. They're really high on them. This talent is likely getting ready to go up to the main roster, and is what people are talking about. And then some allegations come out and say that they didn't find
The eyes on this cat. He's a bad apple. With the open
for some reason that talent is released. There's got to be a reason for it. And yeah, like kind of what you're getting into, it would, for a talent that had this much upside, there would have to be potentially just as big of a downside somewhere that may or may not be true, but if we're uncovered, could be devastating. That's the kind of decisions a company would have to make in this hypothetical scenario. So hopefully you enjoyed that.
Zachary Moore, our new favorite, he just became a member of the channel.
Hey!
And then he just gifted 10 memberships.
What?
So 10 people in the chat are now going to become members on Zachary Moore.
What? You can do that?
Yes, you can absolutely do that.
Zachary Moore. This is our new guy. This is our new guy right
Zachary
here.
Moore is the guy.
Yo, man, he's gonna be moved up to the partnership track here soon. He just gifted 10 memberships.
He just gifted 10 memberships. Yes.
Thank you.
Rock and roll.
Welcome aboard, and the new 10 members. I can't wait to meet the new 10 members.
I would love to meet the new 10 members. Let's get to our final emailed case, and then we can see how long we have with the chat.
Okay.
So go to share this tab and
Oh, yeah. All right. Hi, Mr. Otunga. My name is Will, and I run the YouTube channel. It's a small channel with less than 6,000 subscribers, but I'd like to address legal issues and have open discussions. I also work as a paralegal. Oh, nice. So I have full respect for the legal profession and understand how the legal system works. Are you at all familiar with copyright law? Somewhat. There's a specific attorney that has been threatening channels like mine to sue and dox us on behalf of his subscribers. When he does that, he makes misogynistic and discriminatory, racist and sexist remarks about people he dislikes. So this individual is a misogynist, racist, sexist. Okay. This person who's also trying to dox Will. He also makes racist remarks towards me, referring to me as his boy, which I find offensive. That is definitely a loaded word. If anything, I would love to discuss this with you or even see you do a video on attorneys' code of ethics and how attorneys should act both on and off camera. If you'd like further details about this attorney and some of his actions, I can send you a complaint I sent to the California State Bar. So you can see the exhibits and give your legal opinion. So even if not, still love your channel. I think your theme song is one of the greatest. LOL. Thank you for reading this. Have a great day. Thank you.
I think it may have happened again. So, just to bring back the technical difficulties ticker. To kind of fill the dead air here, we determined that there are 3 different issues happening in this case. One is harassment through doxing. And for those who don't know, on YouTube, when there's a DMCA claim, like a copyright claim on YouTube, you can make a copyright claim for anything. And if YouTube deems it valid, they then send the copyright claim to the person who uploaded the video. They take down the video and then say, you can either keep this video down or you can file a counter notification. A counter notification is the first step in a legal process. If you file the counter notification, you need to have your full name and legal address. And what has been incredibly common under counter notifications is people will create fake copyright claims on videos or on content, because you could do this with an Instagram post. People will do that specifically so that that person then files a counter notification, and then the counter notification has their full legal name and their personal address. There are whole companies that exist to act as LLCs that have PO boxes and LLC names that can respond to a counter notification without a full legal name and a personal address. I looked into this case specifically, and that's what is happening here. And we broke it down into 3 different things. One thing was that this person is doing harassment through doxing, and they're likely doing their doxing through false copyright claims. So those are technically 2 different issues. One is the false copyright claims. The other is the doxing. The other thing I noticed in here, he talked about misogynist, discriminatory, racist, sexist remarks. As far as I'm aware, those are First Amendment protecting unpopular speech. Now, hear me out. What we mean by that is, under the First Amendment, you are allowed to make discriminatory, racist, and sexist remarks. You are not allowed to say those things on YouTube without repercussions per the rules of YouTube. So those are 2 different things. Whether you're violating YouTube's terms of service or community guidelines is different from whether or not you have a First Amendment right to violate those guidelines. So when we're talking legally, this is of the 3 things, this is the thing they're doing that is legal under the law, assuming both, well, they said California bar, and then the third thing is the Attorney Code of Ethics. And I do agree with him, we need to do a whole video about the Attorney Code of Ethics, because that First Amendment protecting unpopular speech, that is for a regular citizen, whereas somebody who is a lawyer and barred under a state as a lawyer is held to a different standard of public speech as it pertains to them continuing to be a lawyer. Speaking of lawyers.
I'm back.
I realized midway through that I went in and like pretty well explained these 3 points that we talked about yesterday. So
Okay, so you explained it already.
I got all the way down to just attorney code of ethics. So we'll go to the top. Talk about harassment through doxing, and then specifically talk about the other thing. I'll get there. Talk about specifically, first off, harassment through doxing, and then also misrepresenting yourself in a legal action, which is what you're doing when you're...
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Before we get into today's big story, man, Tommaso Ciampa. That didn't take long, did it? Tommaso Ciampa debuting in All Elite Wrestling, last night's AEW Dynamite. You know it has to be bad in WWE. when an NXT original, supposedly a Hunter Hearst Helmsley, a doofus son-in-law guy, Tommaso Ciampa, decides to go all elite instead of staying right there where it was comfortable. He could have got a paycheck, nothing more but a paycheck. And you know it has to be bad when he said, I'm gonna choose Tony Khan, not Sensei Simpleton. And that is supposedly, that was supposed to be a Hunter Hearst Helmsley guy. Man, is the foundation cracking in World Wrestling Entertainment. In fact, the reason we ain't gonna get right into that big story is because there's a little bit of a channel update for this weekend. And it has to do with WWE continuing to crumble to its very core. You see, there will once again be no SmackDown review this week. No SmackDown review this week. I am letting that be known right now. And the reason is because SmackDown, WWE once again failed to pull in 1 million viewers for last week's SmackDown. If you're new to the channel, I have a rule on this channel. A show must hit at least 1 million in viewership for me to review it from top to bottom, beginning to end, start to finish. Now, once in a while, for you guys, I will do a bonus review. Sometimes NXT, AEW, TNA recently, the local bingo hall. But once in a while, for you guys, I will do a bonus review on any company I choose, any show that I choose. But as far as consistency, a show has to maintain 1 million in viewership. Well, now, SmackDown is consistently hitting under 1 million. This is the 3rd week in a row that they have failed to hit 1 million. So this is not just once in a while anymore, guys. This is not, oh, BC, it was a holiday. Oh, BC, it was a championship game. Oh, BC, it was a tape delay. Oh, BC, it was my grandmother's 95th birthday. The whole country celebrates my grandmother's 95th birthday. Nobody's at home at 10 p.m. watching WWE. No, the excuses are gone. This is 3 weeks in a row that WWE cannot hit 1 million. And just to run down, just so you guys have your own numbers in check. 1/9 edition of SmackDown, January 9, 990K. 1/16, 1 week later, 968K. So they lost 22,000 viewers between that week. And then last week, 1/23, 943K. They lost another 25. So at this rate, even if they continue at this rate, and you say they'll lose 28,000 this week, guys, that would put them at what? 935, 25, 915K. If they do this for 2 more weeks, they are in the 800s. WWE has to be so thankful right now that we're entering WrestleMania season. Where maybe, not because the product is any good, but maybe there'll be some semblance of casual fans returning. Maybe they can get back to a 1-1. They can make a wish every night on that shining star that they can maybe reach 1.2 during WrestleMania season. But this goes to show you when there is no bells and whistles. This is where they are now. Under 1 million is now the new normal. Their average was 1.1. That is no more. Their average is now in the 900K range. And I told you guys this was happening all along. Probably the only one to be this honest with you. Well, people stumble across the channel and go, whoa, that's negative. Whoa, that's harsh. Is it? Not harsh enough, because look at what has happened. I was the only one right, man. I sounded that alarm from the jump because I saw how bad the product was. I saw that it wasn't getting any better. In fact, it was getting worse. But even more alarming, I saw that the powers that be from Sensei Simpleton on down. In fact, from the doofus son-in-law on up, TKO. But any suit and tie in World Wrestling Entertainment, I saw that they didn't even care. The fact that the product wasn't getting any better, in fact getting worse, that's one thing. But it's even more alarming when the powers that be don't even care. In fact, Sensei Simpleton told all of you to f*** off when you tried to raise those concerns last year. He said, oh yeah, you don't like the product? He said, well then you're not a real fan and you can f*** off. Because according to the doofus son-in-law, in order to be a real fan, you have to accept everything. And after you have consumed all of the garbage they presented to you, you get back in line with your wooden bowl and your wooden spoon, and you look up at the doofus and you say, please sir, can I have some more? And he'll slop some more toilet garbage onto your bowl. That's what constitutes a real fan these days. You know, it's funny for the individuals that will come across a channel like this and go, wow, that he's really negative and harsh. Man, he's really going in on this review. And then they turn around and they see these numbers. And the only thing they can conclude is, whoa, the really harsh guy on YouTube, he was right. Everybody else was making it sound like WWE is in its best era. Even the wrestlers told us this was the best era. We hear non-stop how business is booming. But yet the guy who's being really honest, that BC on YouTube, wow, he was the one that's right. The numbers are going into the toilet. They're falling faster and faster by the week. Getting lower and lower into the 900,000s. For everybody that made fun of the NXT numbers, the AEW numbers, do you realize that a WWE show, a primetime WWE show that's been around for decades, is heading that way? So if an AEW can find its groove, if AEW stumbles upon one or two massive stories that captivates the attention, the imagination of the wrestling world, they get that spark, they get that momentum, and AEW starts to gain viewership. If WWE keeps falling like this, they're gonna pass each other. But WWE's going the wrong way. AEW will be going upwards. That's a very real possibility now for everybody that was making fun of All Elite Wrestling. You better make sure your own kitchen ain't burning first. Because WWE, somebody let the doofus son-in-law cook in that kitchen. And they were too stupid to know that this dude was gonna burn it down. Because he is they gave the keys to Hunter Hearst Helmsley. They gave the chef's hat. They gave the frying pan. They let him run the WWE stove, and he is burning that company to its foundation. You think I'm happy to see WWE go to 900,000 viewers? Do you think I'm happy to watch Monday Night Raw globally struggle to stay over 2 million viewers? When they bragged how they can now reach 700 million people, and they have to scratch and claw to maintain 2 out of 700. Domestically, Monday Night Raw is struggling to maintain a 1.1 to a 1.2. Domestically, they're not much better than SmackDown! This is something, BC, like a lot of you have watched since we were kids, man. For everybody that goes, well, BC, he must not like WWE. No, it's the opposite. I loved WWE. That's where the passion comes from. That's why I am honest in my reviews, because I see from a mile away how bad it is. I try to help. And instead, we get told to f*** off. Well, okay, how'd that work out for you? Because now you are at 900,000 viewers, and you can barely get on Netflix's global top 10 list for Raw. That's what happens when you tell your own consumers, your own audience, your own fans, your own base to f*** off. Nobody's happy that this is happening. We tried sounding the alarm. We tried to say these shows are lifeless. They have no energy. There's no thought behind them. There's no meaning. There's no purpose. There's no good storylines. There's barely any storylines. There's no larger-than-life characters. There's barely any characters. Music plays, it's so damn generic these days, I have to wait for the wrestler to come through the curtain to even know who it is. Back in the day, the music would play, I know exactly who it was. These days, the wrestler comes out with their generic music, and they're just as generic as the music! I want to feel some type of way when a Randy Orton comes out, or a Kevin Owens, a Mello, a Dragunov. I would like to. No feeling, no emotion at all, because the booking of them is so horrible, you lost interest. Doofus son-in-law goes out of his way to make sure he ruins everybody, even Roman Reigns! Even Roman Reigns! Even Roman Reigns! Feels irrelevant these days. The last 3 or 17 times he's returned, it just gets more meaningless. Oh no, he's back for 3 weeks. He got his shoes stolen. I hope he can get revenge on Bronson Reed. Then he goes away for another couple months. I forgot if he even got his shoes back. I don't even care. Buy a new pair of shoes, come back in 3 months, which is basically what he's doing. Can't even show up to get any hype for the Royal Rumble. They just announced on Raw, by the way, Roman's gonna be in Saudi. Roman's gonna cash in on $1 million paycheck. He'll stick around for a few weeks, then he's gone for 2 months, but don't worry, he'll be back for WrestleMania, maybe, with some new shoes! Not even Roman Reigns. Nobody feels special at all. LA Knight, that was a fun thing, right? We were all riding this wave, and pretty much, Doofus just shut down the ocean. Wave? Ocean? LA Knight? No thanks. 3 years. 3 years. LA Knight's not even on TV these days. He'll be in the Rumble. Some people are like, maybe he'll win it, BC. You know the sad thing is, even if a miracle happened and LA Knight was able to win the Rumble, he was given, finally, the key to do such. The fact that this much of his momentum has been shattered, and now you wanna give him just the smallest piece of a rocket? Now you wanna give him this match when you've absolutely butchered his momentum. So what? A month down the road, go, see, it failed, I told you guys! And take your little piece of the rocket back. It's like he sabotages them on purpose. Whenever something is lightning hot, and it's sitting in his lap, he makes sure that he cools it off. This fire is right in his lap. Ride it! Instead, he grabs the fire hose and he cools it right down. He waters that fire right down, man. The water is boiling. Instead of cooking something, he puts the lid on it. He shuts the oven. The water's boiling. Now what do? Guess I'll shut the oven. Nah, of course. Why would you bother cooking something? R-Truth was the talk of the summer. He did nothing. He put him in catering and then brought him out as Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. What in the world? Vincent Kennedy McMahon and Paul Heyman finally made Roman Reigns. Man, it took a village. McMahon had tried for years to push this guy as a babyface. Finally, Roman said, you gotta turn me heel, man. So Vince McMahon, Paul Heyman, and Roman Reigns concocted this whole bloodline situation, and Vince McMahon, finally, the one good thing Vince McMahon did in the last 5 to 10 years, the bloodline story. And man, it was good. And when McMahon takes off, he hands Roman Reigns, who's finally made, hands him to Helmsley on a silver platter. And Helmsley's like, oh, what do I do with this? Do I throw it away? Is this leftovers? I don't know what's on this plate. I'm gonna throw it away. And Roman Reigns under Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Freaking brutal. There's a phrase at the beginning of Rhea Ripley's theme song. This is my brutality! And I can't help but think, every time I'm watching a WWE show, I can't help but think, this is our brutality! Hunter Hearst Helmsley, man. And it's wild because for the last, it seemed like 10 years, the last 10 years of Vince McMahon, you could tell he was done, right? He'd done it all. He was a creative genius back in his day. He was. We gotta give him that credit. It helped that he had the Vince Russos and whatnot and the right talent and was ready to take those risks for the Attitude Era and enter Ruthless. The last 10 years, it was so bad that we were like, anybody would be better than Vince, right? Anybody. And so many people were already ready to anoint Hunter Hearst Helmsley, but BC was already waving that red flag because I said, hold up. This dude, he's not creative at all. Like, he's got no creativity whatsoever. There's been so many of his peers that worked with him that told you that. Vince Russo told you while he was writing for WWE, he was the one dude that never had any ideas. Nothing. If he wanted something done, he actually would go to Vince, kiss his ass, and just make it happen. But he never saw any ideas from him. So all of these red flags and all of these talents and writers and everybody that knew Helmsley was coming out and going, hold on. If you're going by NXT Black and Gold, that was Dusty Rhodes and William Regal. That was their NXT. Helmsley just rode in once a week on the company jet and took credit for it all. That was Dusty Rhodes and William Regal. Everybody knows that. Dusty Rhodes more than anybody. But everybody just couldn't let that go. Black and Gold, it was good for a few years. Put him in charge of WWE. And I told you, hold up. The company will sink even faster with the doofus son-in-law in charge. But okay, nobody wanted to believe it. All the Helmsley fanboys and all of the WWE bubble boys who think they're doing right by the company, right? They think they're more of a fan by saying everything is awesome instead of actually criticizing the product to make it better. So they go, Beastly, he's negative and harsh. They don't understand that they're the ones ruining WWE. They're the reason why WWE SmackDown is now in the 900,000s in viewership, and Raw can barely hang on to 2 million globally. They're the reason. Because they refuse to say any of this sucks. Or they'll say it for a little bit, and then all of a sudden, some bells and whistles will happen, right? A title change, a new superstar arrival. Here's Chris Jericho. Something will happen, and they'll go, oh, WWE is back on track. See, guys? Hold up. Don't tell... If you say that, then he think, okay, that's all I gotta do. Title changes, cheap pops. And that's what actually happens, right? It's a vicious cycle. Nothing gets accomplished, clearly. Nobody actually cares watching at home. That's why the numbers continue to fall and fall and fall every week. I just told you the last 3 weeks of SmackDown. 1-9, 990K. 116, 968K. Lost 22,000. 123 last week, 943K. Lost 25,000. That's a trend. SmackDown hasn't even touched 1 million in a month.
It's pathetic.
Raw just got back on the Netflix top 10 global list only because 3 of the Stranger Things listings are now off. Made a little bit of room, and they just squeaked in at number 9.
Now we're at war with France. For your information, we are now at war with England.
Nobody's happy to watch something that we grew up watching and loving. Nobody's happy to see
The
it just
nation of
crumble.
Spain welcomes you.
But damn! We've been trying to sound that alarm to fix it so that the doofus will be removed to get somebody who's competent. That's all we're asking for. Get somebody who's competent running the ship. Otherwise, it's straight into the iceberg. You know it's bad when the audience doesn't even care about the WWE product anymore. So we can't even talk about it from top to bottom. So many of you guys tell me all the time, BC, I don't even watch the WWE product anymore. I just can't wait to listen to your reviews because it's more entertaining. And I appreciate that. That's always the goal. When you listen to a BC review, I want it to be knowledgeable, filled with facts, and great discussion. But obviously entertaining as well. But now I'm really starting to see that if it's between 2 or 3 hours of watching a WWE show or listening to BC run wild on it, BC running wild on it is way more entertaining. I don't blame you at all for skipping the shows and then just grabbing a coffee, kicking back, and listen to BC go off. No SmackDown review this week. That was supposed to be a little 2-minute PSA to let you guys know. Ended up being a rant. Because no, I'm not happy that these numbers are going so damn low. It's actually really quite pathetic. And for years, I've been trying to tell you this is what's going to happen. Helmsley's not the guy. Helmsley sucks. Actually, he's really stupid. He's burning the place down. He is literally destroying, if not pro wrestling in totality, it's definitely WWE. And all of these things you are seeing happen in real time. I told you 2025 was the appetizer. 2026, Helmsley is saying, hold my coffee. Now I'm really going to destroy it. And WWE, it's January. It's WrestleMania season, really. And they better be so thankful because that's the only reason they may hover around 1 million going into March, April. And for Raw, maybe they can stay above 2.5 going into March, April. Because damn, after Mania season, you don't even want to think about it. But you have to because that's what's happening. Fans no longer care because the shows suck. There's no storylines, there's no larger-than-life characters, there's no reason, rhyme, or purpose to anything being done. It's all random. It's all title changes every single week. Brawls nonstop. Cheap pops. No continuity, no consistency, nothing of value, nothing of substance. These are amplified facts. And we know this because I am delivering the evidence to you. It literally says 943K. They've lost another 25. Raw's premiere was a 3.2. With Stranger Things' crossover, supposedly, you had the big tease from WWE with Chris Jericho, so people flocked over to give your product one more chance. And they saw all they needed to see in that one show. 1 week later, they were nearly 1 million viewers lost. They were right back to trying to hang on to a 2.5. How sad is that? That's in 1 week. You had all of these people come back. You had another chance to show them that they should stay, that WWE is thriving, and they saw it and they said, nope, that's exactly why I left the first time. BC's the only one that is telling you this honestly. BC's the only one who's being this honest with you. But too many people want to live in La La Land. Put on the earmuffs. La la la. I don't hear any of that. WWE's amazing. If it was amazing, it would be gaining viewers. It wouldn't be losing them. Right? If something's good, it wouldn't be you wouldn't be losing them. That's not good. That's not good. You see, when The Walking Dead was thriving, more people were tuning in. As it fell off, more people tuned out. That's what happens. If a show's getting better and better, it's bringing more and more people in. That's how it works. No SmackDown review this week. The new normal is 900K sem-odd for WWE. I told you. I fucking told you. Now, along the same lines, let's jump into that. I guess that became the main story, right? That was your big rant. But we're still going to talk about this. This is massive. And it coincides with our previous discussion. Tommaso Ciampa is all elite. That didn't take long, did it? His contract with WWE just expired. It ran out. And it sounds like it was Tommaso's decision to leave WWE. He had made that decision, and a lot of the wrestling world was like, wait a second, that's easy money, dude. Like, you just have to sit in catering, eat food, collect a paycheck. He's a family man. Food on the table, easy peasy, as Oscar would say. What are you doing, man? Like, if you go to another company, if you went to AEW, who's to say you're going to be booked right, man? And BC's like, what are you talking about? What are you saying? How can he be booked any worse than what WWE did to this guy? Have you seen Tommaso Ciampa during the, quote, Helmsley era? Are you serious? I want to give you guys some facts, man. This is supposedly a Helmsley guy, right? He's part of the old NXT Black and Gold. So for this guy to choose AEW and that quickly, he'd rather work for Tony Khan than stick with the doofus son-in-law. That should tell you everything you need to know about the doofus son-in-law. And when Ciampa thanked everybody, it was like a 2-page thank you when he left WWE. If you noticed, Helmsley was not thanked. Not individually. And then he goes to AEW this quickly? That tells you this guy had already made up his dome piece way in advance. That tells you everything you need to know. But BC, you know this channel. You know BC's going to give you facts anyway. But you don't even need them. Just look at what has happened, and that tells you everything you need to know. This guy would rather work for Tony Khan. than Hunter Hearst Helmsley. But let me see, drop some facts. You tell me, why would this guy stick around? Some people, guys, you have to remember, it's not just about the paycheck. They believe in themselves. They know they still have talent. They know they have skill. They want to show it. They want to utilize it. They want to achieve more. And it was clear that in WWE, that wasn't going to happen. Helmsley had made up his mind. You're not the guy. You're not even one of them. So some wrestlers, yes, they take a chance. They bet on themselves. What is wrong with that? Why does everybody just have to be about the dollar? Oh, they can stick in catering but still make fat money. Maybe Tommaso wants more. Check this WWE booking out under Hunter Hearst Helmsley. You guys ready for this? Let's just go back 1 year. Let's say, what's it about to be? February? So let's go March of 2025 to now. Basically a full year. Tommaso Ciampa has had 16 matches. 16 matches in a full year. Only 2 W's. He's won 2 matches in a whole year. 2 out of his last 16. 16 being everything from March to now. 2 W's. And by the way, only one of them was a singles match. Only one! I think that was like Chris Sabin or something. And then the other one, maybe the Motor City Super Soakers. If you guys remember them, they don't wrestle anymore. I don't even know if they're still with WWE. Nobody cares. One of those 2 was singles. Only 10 out of those 16 matches were SmackDown matches. So only 10 were actually televised. A bunch were like holiday tours, things like that. So this dude got to showcase his skills 10 times in a whole year. And let's be honest, he became a comedy act for Hunter Hearst Helmsley. He became a comedy act. One of the most serious professional wrestlers, or at least should be booked that way, clearly. His best work was being that Blackheart, was being that vicious, diabolical Tommaso Ciampa. So Helmsley's like, let's make him little or mini doofus. Remember, they had R-Truth running around calling him mini doofus. Thinking that Ciampa was the doofus son-in-law. That's what the character became. That's what happened to Tommaso Ciampa. He didn't just, quote, fall off. He fell off the radar. Became a comedy act. He started wearing a shirt that said, "Don't call me a jackass." His new character was Tommaso the Jackass Ciampa. That's a true story. No, really. They actually made merch that said, "Don't call me a jackass." To, entice the crowd to call him a jackass more. That's what Hunter Hearst Helmsley, when he gathered around the creative table with all the other doof troop, and Sensei Simpleton said, well, what if we make Tommaso the jackass of WWE? We could print up some merch. We can really get this thing hot. And every week, when he was used, you would see Tommaso bickering and arguing with all of the other tag teams backstage on SmackDown. Guys, this was every week. I wish I could tell you it was once in a blue moon. Every single week, because they have nothing for the tag team division. There is no tag team division. There's tag teams, there's no division. They change hands left and right. You never know who the tag team champions are. I think they just changed hands last week, didn't they? I think the Wyatts handed them over to MFTs. You probably didn't even know the Wyatts were champions. I don't blame you. I never know. Every single week, they were backstage. All of them. Supposedly, they all don't like one another, but every week, they're always hanging around one another. And they're always arguing and bickering. And Tommaso, it just looks like it's the last place in the world he wants to be. And sure enough, come to find out, it was the last place in the world he wanted to be. He was already, most likely this whole last year, bare minimum, he was already thinking, I have to get out of here. Gotta talk to Tony Khan. Even if it breaches a contract, I don't even care. Right? Communicate with Tony. Tony Khan can be Ron Cena. Tommaso's talking to Ron Cena. Ron, get me over to AEW. Tony Khan as Ron Cena's like, all right, I'm working on it. Don't tell the doofus. But guys, I'm just going over some of Tommaso's booking in the last year. We could go over 3 years of Tommaso doing nothing. Absolutely nothing under Hunter Hearst Helmsley. But you know it's got to be so bad when he was a supposed Helmsley guy from the old school black and gold. And it's so bad that he's like, I gots to get out. And I'm immediately, guys, he didn't give it like, he didn't take a week vacation. He just went right to he didn't. Do not pass go. Don't worry about the $200. You go right to AEW. He went to work immediately for Tony Khan. And there he is with Briscoe, and the title is hoisted up, and you're thinking, damn, already. You want to know the sad truth, man? Or I guess it's a good truth for Tommaso now. But he is already booked in one moment. He is already booked better than he was in all of his run in WWE. In one moment, you have him and Briscoe with a singles championship hoisted above them. What a moment. And you think back and you go, whoa, he had none of that under Hunter Hearst Helmsley in WWE. He was wearing a Jackass shirt. Don't call me a jackass! They had him in backstage skits with R-Truth where they thought he was Hunter Hearst Helmsley. He was Mini Doofus. And in one moment, this guy is right there with a champion and a title over his head. Man. It's amazing to see what happens when you book somebody properly and you let them be themselves. You could have Psycho Killer or you could have Jackass. One of them got a really good pop. The other one, nobody cared. Amazing how that works. Tommaso Ciampa, AEW, the debut is official. I'm really, it's going to be interesting to see if he gets that championship immediately or they hold off. But no matter what, this is a dude that can put storylines on his back. He can work the microphone. He can clearly work any match imaginable. You give this guy a storyline. It's off to the races. We saw that in NXT with Gargano. That's going to be interesting for everybody going, oh, good luck, man. He ain't going to be booked right. Did you see how Sensei Simpleton, the doofus son-in-law, booked him for 3 years? Have you seen the last year of this poor dude's career in WWE? Have you seen how Hunter Hearst Helmsley has booked this guy? But Tony Khan is somehow going to do even worse? Bro, his first moment was better than all of what he did in WWE. Did I say all? All of his time in WWE. One AEW moment surpassed it. Eclipsed. Unreal, man. That's unreal. That it could get so bad that even a quote Helmsley guy said, I'm out of here, bro. You suck. I'm going to AEW. Salute to Tommaso betting on himself. We'll see where that journey takes him. Until next time, and there will be that next time. BC saying check you, unit. Salud.
Doomer content on YouTube.
YouTube is like
As you all know, my future to be wife Pokimane, because she makes me smile and happy, is upset currently because you evil chuds and incels did not donate money to her stream. How dare you not donate to the multimillionaire? I personally think this is extremely bad, sad, and offensive. You should feel bad about that.
Massive day for the unemployed. Pokimane is getting flamed by the internet again.
Fortunately, we live in such a self-centered, capitalistic society.
Criticize.
When someone doesn't gift you money for just existing. True and real, my queen wife. True and real.
Capitalism after selling $28 cookies, having a Labubu dangling from her mic, and creating videos on TikTok showing off luxury items like bags and makeup.
And it sucks because it trains us to prioritize work and money above all else, even friendships, even being there for other people. And then again, it creates this culture where people are like, oh, I don't want to bother them. They're probably busy.
To be fair, right message, wrong messenger. She tried to sell cookies for $28, $197.
The cookies are never leaving.
If you're a broke boy, just say so. Oh, I've heard so many people
You know what? I'm not even mad at this. Because I'm gonna own half her money anyway, boys. That's because I'm not gonna lie. I'll try my best, but the divorce is happening at some point. When the legal standard for divorce time obviously passes, you know?
Discuss this, in order to have a village, you need to be a villager.
Villagers do hold all the emeralds. What did Notch mean by this?
I think that's really true. Like, if you want people to be there for you when you need it, you gotta be there for them when they need it.
Mind you, she's pushing 40 and she just learned that helping people is good.
Whoa, relax. There's a lot of empathy to go around.
Andrew Schultz level epiphany.
But it's also annoying to even have to, like, convince someone to be there for you so you can be there for them.
To be absolutely fair, still better than Techstone and Asmongold. Absolutely mogs them, in fact.
It's like, it's a whole myriad of things. Fortunately, we live in such a self-centered, capitalistic society. Got an engagement ring for myself.
Get that Chinese Labubu piece of shit off your microphone. Real ones spend their money on Pokemon.
I don't even know what's a Labubu still.
Pokimane, eat the rich. Also Pokimane.
Oh,
I don't know.
How can you not appreciate that? How can you not? Okay, and there's people still, by the way, dumb enough to give her money. You gotta appreciate it at this point, okay?
Oh man, she makes communism sound so comfy that I almost forgot about what a complete self-centered she was. On the WestGen channel, we're known for our due diligence, and this was actually for a giveaway, so, you know, it makes it less bad. She called her own supporters broke because they didn't want to buy her $30 cookies, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. Valkyrie got upset and banned a viewer for calling her a moody socialist billionaire.
Anyways, how are you guys doing?
Well, to be fair, it's pretty offensive to call just a multi-10 millionaire into a billionaire, okay? That's disrespectful, okay?
Loves. If you think I'm a billionaire, you cookie bean. I'm so sorry.
She just 14 days. Tyler 1 hard stuck Korea gold lol. Come on, man.
That's the best username. I love Thailand 1, but not in that way.
If I ever was a billionaire, I wouldn't be a billionaire for more than a day. I would give away most of my money.
Okay, listen. You people just don't understand life, okay? Let me explain this to you because you're too poor to understand. When you're a multi-millionaire, you're actually pretty poor, so you can't give that money away. But when you're a billionaire, you can. Okay? There's a massive difference. Okay? There's the good ultra-rich and the bad ultra-rich. And clearly, my wife is the good ultra-rich.
But I also think that's most people.
Speak for yourself. I wouldn't even give that money to my close family. She says most people, but most people will never in their life.
Where's good? But would you give that money to Techstone? Come on, Mr. There's that video. There's that TikTok video. Come on. Come on, are you gonna even mention the fact that Takedown came back and instantaneously tried to farm Pokimane? Wait, that is Takedown. Oh, he actually mentions it, Jesus.
Even be a millionaire, so you're already in a lucky position. Just give your money away right now. Billionaire, multimillionaire, what difference is that to Joseph, who's living on the street homeless? I would give away most of my money. Is being a billionaire the milestone where you give your money away or something? Pokimane is a multimillionaire, so why not start giving that money away now? Maybe some people could finally afford her $28 cookies, too. Yeah, hating billionaires as a millionaire just seems like you're throwing rocks in a glass house. It doesn't really make much sense.
And we hate the rich. Anyway.
I mean, she has an audience, so it does make sense to some, okay?
Too much. Aren't you the rich?
Hot take, but hating on stuff you can't control and being envious sort of makes you a sad little loser. WestJet, billionaires shouldn't exist. Okay, then do something about it.
If I ever was a billionaire, I wouldn't be a billionaire for more
Oh, that's a call to action.
than a day. I would give away most of my money.
This is cancer.
And you know what? In honor of Pokimane, everything on my merch website is 20% off using code Pokimane. Go on westjet.shop and pick yourself up an unemployed hoodie, t-shirt, or hat to support the channel.
Jesus Christ! Did that only cost $60? Holy Pokimane's cookies certainly don't actually seem that bad. Holy wow! Oh, Jesus!
T-shirt or hat to support the channel.
A $30 hat also. That's diabolical.
Oh yeah, the coupon's only valid for the next like 10-15 people.
I know, math is hard.
Whoa, even Jailtone replied.
Ooh.
TLDR of Pokimane drama.
Whoa. Calling him Jailtone doesn't give him justice. Call him Artone, okay? Everyone knows. Like, and I don't want to hear any of you absolute sniveling losers in the comments saying, oh, it's a civil case. Yes! That matters. People are acting like civil cases are these magical things where you're just like, okay. This is a civil case, so you're just automatically guilty or whatever. Bro, Johnny Depp also was in a civil case. He won it. Are you going to say Amber Heard was actually on the right? If civil cases don't matter, are you going to support Amber? Bro, really? Oh my god, listen, this guy literally admitted in the transcripts to doing those things, okay? This is not some kind of she said, he said thing. This is the guy literally admitting to doing these things. Like, we don't need the civil case or whatever case. He just literally has admitted in front of a judge that, yeah, everything she said was true.
Is a multimillionaire, 30-year-old female, claims society is broken where people prioritize work, has no kids.
But you gotta give it to Takedown, okay? He tried instantaneously just to switch it up a little bit funny.
Says society is broke for people prioritizing making money. Frequently purchases high-end clothing, Gucci, etc.
To be absolutely fair, you know what? He actually got a point on that because Takedown's now broke. He spent money on 5 lawyers. That's probably, he probably spent over $1 million. $1 million in this lawsuit and lost horribly.
Frequently purchases high-end clothing, Gucci, etc. Sold audience $32 cookies. Called people who couldn't buy them broke boys and shamed them. Anyways.
Man, fuck that morally bankrupt bitch Pokimane. My Genshin Impact.
I literally could not care less.
Valkyrie ends stream after 30 minutes with the worst excuse after gifted subs stopped coming in. I thought my meeting was at 2. It's at 1. I'm 8 minutes late.
Guys, I thought my meeting was at 2. It's at 1, which means I'm 8 minutes late. I'm so sorry. Love you guys so much. I've got to depart. Thank God I didn't get into a Valorant game.
That meeting was with me.
I'll see you guys soon. Bye!
Does he know? Like, I get it. 24K likes, but do we really know she didn't actually have a meeting? You really are a piece of to keep pushing fake this. I mean, using Pokimane's own word.
A self-centered, capitalistic society?
The reason why Pokimane, people are like, well, these women get so much hate, like Ray or Poki, and is because they're still doing the same that like 20-year-old girls do.
Oh no.
I think for a lot of people it just feels like they don't ever have real talent.
Yeah. No one cares, Miskiv. Can you please get back to the Takedown pot because that's the least fun.
Get here. She's literally regurgitating political science slop you'd hear a first year say at university. Yeah, I'm never searching Pokimane up on TikTok again. What are we talking about? Hey, at least Reddit was cooking. Huh. I wonder who that's for. We live in a Why not buy myself an engagement ring? Self-centered. If you're a broke boy, just say so. Capitalist society. No, not me. The ultra-rich has an extremely overpriced toy hangs off her microphone. I don't necessarily disagree with some of the message, but damn, could have been someone else saying it.
In order to have a village, you need to be a villager.
It's not really shocking.
As gamers, we all know how absolutely horrible are regulations and overreach. And maybe that is currently happening. Or maybe the conversation is a little bit harder than that. Valve has already gotten sued, I don't know how many times, but at least 5 by different giant entities in different countries because they're a monopoly or something else. No, Valve's just a good company that we all enjoy using because, honestly, Gabe should get his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th yacht at this point. I don't care. I want to support him in this endeavor. But in any case, there is a new thing on the block that has already taken out Epic Games. You know, the guys who own Fortnite. And if you know anything about them, you know that they are literally gonna hire an army, literal army of lawyers to not even lose a single cent in their microtransactions if they can. And they still lost. In fact, they got absolutely decimated, which is even funnier. And now, this same situation is happening to Blizzard. And now, again, I am not a fan of over-regulations. I think some regulations are good, otherwise you end up in America where your food is made of plastic. China at least makes that illegal. The irony of China actually being superior to Americans, something, wow, Ameribros, you need to step up because you're eating poison. But that's a different video, I guess. And in any case, now these same people, these same regulations are coming after Blizzard. And my God, is Blizzard cooked.
Everyone get this. Blizzard is under investigation and Epic Games have already lost. That's quite the statement, and here's essentially what's going on, right? Regulators across the EU are now holding some of the biggest companies in gaming accountable for dark patterns and exploitative consumer practices. Meaning, in this case, Blizzard and Epic.
I'm sure, by the way, there's gonna be people who are like, oh no, how horrible! Abusing psychology to get people addicted to stuff, and you're against this? How horrible. Yeah, again, this is why I said, not all government overreach, because this is technically still kind of overreach, is bad, necessarily. Now, can this lead to worse things? Because, well, everything that the government does is a slippery slope? Yes, that's the real problem. You see, this situation is bad because currently what's happening is good. If they destroy Epic, if they destroy World of Warcraft, Blizzard, and all of these companies for trying to, you know, through psychology manipulate people into buying stuff, then that's good. But what this can lead to the future, that's dangerous.
Epic. And what's big is that 2026 may actually be when the tide turns here, and that's because the EU is preparing one of the largest legal rollouts on digital consumer rights in years, and it is one that could change the face of gaming globally. So today, we've got a fairly big story to dive into. Last year we covered the EU's move against virtual currency when the European Consumer Organization laid out key principles for handling digital currencies under existing EU law. And as it turned out...
Honestly, I'm gonna be real with you boys here, okay? Give me a second to compose myself. If women want to spend their money on stupid shit like horse games, go ahead. It's not like they are ever gonna be able to be accountable with their money in the first place. I mean, every single woman in the top 10 most wealthy women in the world got their money through divorce, okay? So, if women want to spend their money on horse games and lose all of it in stupidity, I mean, who am I to actually just stop nature's way? Honestly, you know, rant over.
Now, that whole thing was really contentious, and that's because they hadn't consulted with the games industry before they made their claims, but they also hadn't consulted with, other EU bodies who are basically working in the same area of policy. So it was all a little bit of a mess, but the reason why we're here today is because things have actually changed. You see, in the last few weeks, we've seen that those principles may not have been needed to take on every bad practice, and that's because regulators are already going after major companies like Blizzard and Epic, and they're doing so under existing law. And the first bit of this story is that specific targeting. We'll start off with Activision Blizzard, because they're in hot water with Italy's competition regulator, who have opened up investigations into the use of dark patterns in mobile games. Of course, dark patterns are basically all the manipulative bullshit that you find in games like that. And specifically, we're talking about Diablo.
Oh, and then before someone actually tries to write a comment like, oh, those things don't affect me, they do. This is the reason why I tell everyone, never try to get into psychology. It's gonna make you miserable. The reality is, if someone cracks the code, they can probably tap their fingers like in a specific pattern 3 times and you're gonna become their slave, okay? That's the end game of all of this, which is pretty goddamn scary. And it's very, very likely that someday will be found, how that can be done. But until that point, just know this, that there's no counter to psychological manipulation. Someone who is good enough in manipulation can literally tell you what they're gonna do, how they're gonna achieve it, and what the principles are in it, and they're still gonna get you. Because there is absolutely no counter to anything that actually just, uses your subconsciousness. You can't. It's called the subconsciousness for a reason.
Immortal and Call of Duty Mobile. They're under scrutiny for, quote, engaging in misleading and aggressive practices as well as breaching consumers' contractual rights. Which doesn't sound too good. Now, the allegations run through the usual assortment of things, right? That's the FOMO-driven pop-ups for limited events, obfuscating currency packages, all of the usual dark pattern bullshit that we see in mobile games. But things actually get a little bit more specific. You see, the Italian regulator argues that these games are implicitly targeting kids through lax parental controls. Their use of implicit is real fascinating there. You see, those controls aren't set to maximum protection by default, and they come after the user has already been pressured to surrender over control of their personal data and their refund rights. Lovely. Now, if the regulator finds that these games breach Italian law, then they can demand changes or levy fines. And that is exactly what just happened to Epic Games. And we got the Dutch to thank for it. So, Epic just lost their appeal against a 2024 1.1 million euro fine, which is really not that much, but it was a fine from...
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's kind of actually funny how these companies will lose these things, and they're gonna lose them very convincingly, in fact. And then the fine is gonna be, yes, the company that literally makes multiple tens of billions in profit, pure profit every year. Oh, we're gonna, because of this thing that you're abusing, you probably made like, 5 billion or something like that. Let's fine you 1.1 million. That's gonna teach you. No. This doesn't work. This is the funny part.
The Dutch Consumer Authority. Now, that case was centering on FOMO tactics and timed sales targeting children. Lovely stuff. Obviously, 1.1 million euro is not that much to the makers of Fortnite, right? They probably made that back in the time that it took for us to write this script. Not probably, definitely. But the fine is not the real story here. The regulator insisted that Epic stop using countdown timers that didn't actually mark content being removed from the game. And it's something that we see all over the internet and games and sites, basically fake countdown timers. It's horrible.
Yeah, it's the cheapest FOMO.
I absolutely hate it, so, well, I think it's good that it's actually being looked at. I mean, if a countdown timer reflects reality, then sure, fair enough. If it's just fake bullshit made up to manipulate people's psychology, yeah, that is actually unfair, and I don't think companies should be allowed to do that. So the way to take this is that the first fine is basically just a warning shot. The real threat is demanding compliance with regulator-led changes. That would be a true threat to the bottom line. And 2026 is the year where those demands across the EU are very much about to be supercharged. This is the bit that will truly matter at scale and bring this beyond little small things in individual countries. Now, a while back, I realized something comfortable that I'm sure you've experienced as well, and that...
Not today.
In a piece he wrote for GameIndustry.biz, Dr. Andreas Lober, who is basically heavily involved in the law side on games and on IP, he described the Digital Fairness Act as one of the biggest things that could impact the games industry this year. That's obviously huge. And what this law is an EU-wide review of online consumer problems, not just within games. Much of it covers the likes of social media apps, online stores, subscription services, but there will be impact on games as well, specifically centered around dark patterns, addictive designs, and personalization practices. So very much stuff that we actually feel in the games that we buy and play. Now, of course, most of these things are already regulated in some form. Obviously, Italy and the Netherlands couldn't have launched those cases without, something to go off. But what the DFA will do is close loopholes and create a single policy framework across the entire EU with standardized rules. That's fairly big, and you may be wondering, right, if that is big, what could it actually change for me? Well, the proposal went through public review in 2025, and we're not going to know the final results until the legislation is issued, but we can see what it's interested in, and that means we can see what bits could actually matter to us. The big one. The European Consumer Organization principles that we talked about in the channel last year could become enforceable law. That's huge. And what that would mean is this. Virtual currencies might have to display real-world conversion rates and remove features that pressure purchases. There's also...
Oh, that is massive. That is massive. Again, there's a very simple reason why everyone wants you to go in and buy their currency. And that is... And that is very simple. It's because that disassociates you from value, okay? Knowing that knowing that $20 is 2,000 gems or whatever, just random examples, is fine. But at some point, you kind of start looking at the gems as gems because it's already technically money spent. So you no longer associate it with real life money, even though it very much is.
Scrutiny on the bundling and pricing presentation. Issues like, say, leftover currency, they're all pretty much done so that you've got to buy in a bundle that is more than what you actually need. Also on pity timers that encourage mass spending, on pay to skip, and on pay to win models. So there could actually be solid stuff that could be enforced on all of those fronts. And the sort of change you would see is basically more upfront information, better parental controls built in, and better withdrawal and refund policies, which I think is perhaps the major bit, especially the likes of the refund policies. But what's important to recognize here is that this is a holistic review. So they're looking at skin gambling, loot boxes, and even consumer protections around games whenever they end service. I mean, in a way you could see that as the Stop Destroying Games campaign goals, but approached from the perspective of contract law. Essentially, better terms could entitle refunds if a game shuts down early. I mean, recently we actually had a fun little case in the UK where it turns out if you were to steal someone's virtual currency, so if I somehow stole all of your RuneScape gold, that would actually be me stealing your property. Which does kind of raise the question, what happens if that thing shuts down, including all of your virtual currency?
Oh, this is absolutely destruction. Oh, no. This is one of those bad things, okay? This one seems good on the face of this, but how do you shut down a game? Can a user sue you for the fact that the company owning the game puts out a patch that makes them a lot poorer than they were? You see, this opens up a lot of things. So this is the thing that a lot of people are probably looking at and, oh, this is pretty good. Nope, this is super bad. This is already the slippery slope.
Anyway, obviously UK, not EU, but it's a little spicy, so I thought I'd bring it up. Now, where it gets fun is there's quite a knock-on effect on other areas of interest, not just the kind of free-to-play microtransaction mobile game hell. There's also reviews of subscription models, which could mean easier cancellation for, say, your WoW sub or your PS Plus sub, alongside warning emails for auto-renewals or...
Fun fact, the US Congress voted for a law in America that would just make it so that in America you need to just press one button and there you go, subscription canceled. No, nothing, don't have to, go through 50 different menus and then the most annoying thing in the world, just one button, cancellation. And Yeah, needless to say, that did not pass. For some reason, Congress was against that. Who knows why? I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe some kind of lobbyists can answer that. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
For price rises. All stuff that I think is fairly reasonable. It's basically just giving a consumer more information. Now, to be clear, this stuff is still a ways off from being law. I'll walk you through kind of the process. Q2 of this year will bring the consultation summary and impact assessments, then the final proposal will likely be tabled Q4. And by the way, whenever I say tabled here, I mean that in the UK version of tabled, which means put on the table, and not the North American version of tabled, which usually means put out of the discussion and into the table, where presumably it goes into storage. Yes, table means it's actually happening in this context. Now after that, the EU Parliament and Council will negotiate and adopt the policy, and even then, even once that happens, enforcement will not be an immediate thing. Companies will have time to adapt, and of course, legal challenges.
Yeah. This part is just him saying in an extremely long-winded way that if this gets adopted, it's not going to be done in like a split second. It's going to take literally probably like 3 to 4 or 5, maybe even years of adoption time.
Choice. Publishers could either build an EU-only version of their store that complies with these rules, or they could just change the game for absolutely everyone in the world. The decision will just come down to simple maths. If building an EU-compliant version costs more than what they would lose globally from removing those dark patterns entirely...
Okay, this point I have heard Bellier say before, but I personally think this is absolute bullshit. Like, this doesn't make sense. We already have that. Are you kidding me? China has always a separate client for their existence. Every company does this. I mean, they literally make the client and then just make it so the version in a different country just doesn't have something. It gets deleted, it gets replaced, it gets censored or whatever. I mean, this is happening. This is already happening. And Bellier's like, oh, how will game companies do this? But the same way they have been doing this for literal decades at this point. This is the completely biggest nothing burger ever. It's just going to be a little bit more streamlined. It's going to be even arguably easier for these companies to do this now. That's so strange. That is so strange that he has like, oh, how will companies do this? Well, they're going to do this because they're already doing this. It's not a big deal. This is not even a major change for them. I don't understand this point. Anyway, that was Bill and News 10 out of 10. Bye!
Like a governor needs a car, like teenagers need a car. You need me, you need me.
If you are dealing with a space that is too white or too gray and it feels clinical and boring, add some splashes of red and you will bring it back to life. If you are dealing with a space that is too white or too gray,
Welcome back, I'm That Chemist, and today we're going to be deciding which inorganic compounds are the most cursed. So for today we're going to be talking about inorganic compounds, and the molecules that go in here have to be somewhat inorganic, and we're going to be ranking molecules based on how cursed they are. So without further ado, let's get started. So this first one here, let's look at this krypton in this C60. So it's actually possible to get metals and other atoms inside of a fullerene, also known as a buckyball. This is called an endohedral fullerene, and endohedral fullerenes are somewhat challenging to synthesize, although people have found methods for their synthesis. Now, I think it's pretty cursed to have atoms inside of another atom. I think fullerenes are normally pretty boring because they don't see too much application for traditional organic chemistry, although this time we have an atom inside of it, and that's pretty awesome. Now, you might not think that this is inorganic, but in my opinion, fullerenes aren't very organic. If you disagree, you can comment down below. As you can see, we have a lot of interesting ones to get into today, so let's get started with another noble gas. So in this case, we have bis perfluorophenylxenon, which is able to be isolated, although it's not that stable. Most of the time, noble gases don't want to form complexes. They don't want to be anything other than a neutral noble gas, although it's possible to do it with some elements like xenon. Here we have krypton in its neutral form, but here we have xenon in its +2 form with these two aryl ligands. So this one isn't particularly stable still, although it is pretty interesting to have a carbon-xenon-carbon bond. So I think at the very least, this one probably has to go into B tier. Now, for a lot of these, you might wonder, well, what are the applications? And the answer is there isn't. And there's a lot more of that in inorganic chemistry, in my opinion. But when an inorganic reagent is useful, it's extremely useful. So here's an example of that. Grubbs catalyst. If you're not familiar with Grubbs catalyst, it's often used for a reaction called ring-closing metathesis, which is a way to take two double bonds and snap them together to form a big ring with a double bond in it. Additionally, you can use these catalysts for ring opening polymerization, amongst other reactions. So olefin metathesis, the exchange of olefins, is really useful, and Grubbs chemistry contributed to this in a major way. Grubbs passed away somewhat recently, and so I thought it would be appropriate to include a carbon double bond ruthenium complex in this episode. So double bond carbons to metals are relatively common. They're not super duper common, but they definitely do exist. So I think for that reason, we'll put it in C tier, but because we're only considering how cursed it is. So it's not too cursed, but it is extremely, extremely useful. Now, a very cursed one is this one here. So I've called this one Schrobelgen Special because they didn't have a name for this compound in their paper. But what Gary Schrobelgen and his group did is they made this compound with two different noble gases in the same molecule. So they were able to isolate this as the hexafluoroarsenate salt, and you can see this is just kind of crazy. They've got a krypton right next to a xenon, which is kind of interesting. So I think two noble gases in one molecule, in one complex, definitely goes into S tier. Plus it's for Schrobelgen, so that's appropriate. Now another interesting one is this helium hydride. And the interesting thing about helium hydride is it can be isolated in a laboratory, although it's extremely unstable. Now the most noteworthy thing about helium hydride is it's believed to be the first molecule that ever came into existence shortly after the Big Bang. So this is kind of an interesting molecule. It's definitely cursed because we have helium, the smallest noble gas, with something else connected to it, which is extremely challenging to do. So I think helium hydride also has to go automatically into S tier. Now let's look at some other ones. So here we have boron triazide. And so boron triazide is like less cursed, I would say, compared to some of the other ones. You know, when you're comparing a boron connected to an azide and then you compare that to like, you know, two noble gases together, it's pretty obvious why this isn't going to go into S tier. You know, it's still kind of cool. It's got a lot of nitrogen content to it. It's not super sensitive on its own, but when complexes of it are made, it becomes more sensitive. So this is a high energy compound, an energetic compound, and because it starts with a B, we'll put it into B tier. Now we have this other one here, manganese heptoxide. So those manganeses are super duper oxidized, right? They're already in a +7 state. They don't really want to be sharing that one oxygen. And for that reason, manganese heptoxide will oxidize almost anything, including hexane or cyclohexane. I've actually even had success oxidizing polypropylene with it, and it blew a hole into a polypropylene Eppendorf. Additionally, when this decomposes photochemically or thermally, it makes ozone, and so this is extremely cursed. We're going to put it into A tier. Now, we have a lot of ones here that are fairly cursed, so we can rearrange some of these later on if it gets a little bit competitive. So here we have a really interesting one, this Einsteinium complex. So this is actually the first complex of Einsteinium that was ever prepared. You can see this is a big bulky metal. It's definitely interesting to see this polydentate ligand. Polydentate just means there's a lot of different parts of the ligand, which is the like binding molecule that complexes a metal. Polydentate just means it connects from many different positions. So if you had like bidentate, that would mean it's connected 2 different ways, like from 2 heteroatoms, for instance. But in this case, it's polydentate because it has so many. This is so big that I don't think we can just put it into 1 tier. It's definitely kind of cool, although it's not as cool as some of the other ones in here. If you make a big enough ligand, it'll wrap around anything, so we'll put it between E tier and F tier. Now, another interesting one here is this potassium octochloro-dimolybdate. And so here we have a molybdenum-molybdenum quadruple bond. And quadruple and quintuple bonds are extremely uncommon in chemistry, although they can sometimes be done with metals with big enough shells. So the orbitals that form these need to be sufficiently large. So you can't do this with things like carbon because they're much smaller orbitals. So a quadruple bond is a little bit cursed. So I think we're probably going to put this one in C tier. Although there's some other really cool ones that we need to get to. One such example is diphosphorus, a phosphorus triple bond phosphorus. Now, if this was nitrogen, that wouldn't be too exciting for you, because it's just like nitrogen gas, we have it all the time. But to get phosphorus to behave the way nitrogen does takes quite a bit of work. So this is usually generated in situ, and then it can be trapped out to make diphosphonines through Diels-Alder type reactions. So this one's pretty cool. It's also unstable, so that's kind of gives it a little bit more street cred. But, you know, compared to some of the other ones, it's just a little bit less cool. It is a phosphorus triple bond phosphorus, though, so I think we can put it at least in C tier. The next one I want to talk about is teaflic acid. So teaflic acid is a very strong acid, and once it's deprotonated, it forms teaflate salts. And teaflates are some of the least nucleophilic anions that exist. So this could be really good if you're preparing transition metal complexes, for instance, and let's say your ligands keep doing stuff and your counter ions interacting with your molecule or your complex. It can be advantageous to use a teaflate in those cases. Although there's not too many groups that have used these, they have promising characteristics for future inorganic chemistry. So teaflic acid doesn't look that cursed. It just kind of looks like, you know, every metal and their dog. You can put a bunch of fluorides or an OH on it. So we're going to put it into F tier, which is appropriate because there's plenty of fluorines on it. Now this interesting one here is argon fluorohydride. You might be thinking, wait, argon can form compounds? And sure enough, it can at 8 degrees Kelvin in the presence of a laser on a cesium iodide surface. So those are pretty specific conditions to get argon fluorohydride, although they technically exist. So this has been characterized by IR, so it does exist. Although most of the time it doesn't want to exist. I would say this is also right into S tier because that is super duper cursed. One that I'm a really big fan of is hexaferrosenylbenzene. So here you can see they've got 6 ferrocenes coming off of a benzene. Now you might be wondering, what's this used for? And again, like I said earlier, a lot of the time in inorganic chemistry, the answer is because. Okay, so this is pretty cool looking, but again, it's also pretty massive. So because it doesn't have any characteristics, we're going to have to, or any useful properties, we're going to be a little bit more harsh on it, although it does look pretty cursed because look at how floppy those things are going to be. They're going to be sticking all over the place. I'm actually quite impressed that this could be synthesized because hexa-substituted benzenes are challenging to make at the best of times. So I'm going to put it between C tier and D tier. Now, everybody's favorite we have right here, FOOF, dioxygen difluoride. And it's often joked that the reason it's called FOOF is for the sound it makes because it's highly explosive. And it turns out that this actually does have one application, which is in the synthesis of plutonium hexafluoride, at least by one laboratory. So quite an interesting molecule, definitely cursed because fluorine absolutely hates being anything other than fluoride. We're going to have to put this right into S tier. Now, similar to some of the other noble gas compounds, here we have radon difluoride. Now, radon's below xenon. It's typically you think of radon as something that people in basements get poisoned with if they don't have proper ventilation. So radon difluoride, it's an interesting compound. It's still pretty cursed because it's a noble gas with 2 fluorines. But, I mean, if you compare radon difluoride to helium hydride, it doesn't even compete. Not even close. So for that reason, I'm going to put it into D tier. The further down you get, the easier it is to make compounds from those, generally speaking. So I'm a little bit less impressed with radon difluoride, although I wasn't familiar with any radon compounds before working on this episode. So here's another interesting one, perzenic acid. So it turns out that you can oxidize xenon quite a bit. So here we have perzenic acid. This is not a particularly stable compound. It can be prepared from xenon trioxide, which is prepared from xenon hexafluoride accordingly. And yeah, you could oxidize xenon several times, but it's going to do whatever it can to go back to elemental xenon if possible. So it's not super stable, and it looks pretty cursed. So I think we can put it in B tier. Now, chromoesters. You might have not have heard of chromoesters before, but the reason I came across these was I wanted to make selenonoesters at one point. And you might be thinking, wait a second, don't you mean selenoesters? And for nomenclature's sake, I would prefer to say selenono, like thiono, where it's clear that I'm talking about the carbon double bond selenium, or whatever the chalcogen is. So if you have an ester, you have a carbon double bond oxygen. If you have a thionoester, you have a carbon double bond sulfur. And if you have a selenonoester, you have a carbon double bond selenium, okay? And so this is like similar to carbonyls, and in fact, you can even call them these things apparently. And these can be useful intermediates for preparing thionoesters and selenonoesters. So this is pretty cursed in my opinion because it's got carbon monoxides on it. It's also got a chromium double bond carbon. So I'd say this is pretty cursed. It's at least going to have to go into C tier. Now, artemisinin in A, this is actually a naturally occurring compound. This is present in some marine sponges, and it's pretty toxic. It's not a great compound. It's a little bit cursed because it has arsenic in it, but all those bonds look relatively stable. I think we're going to have to be a little bit more harsh and put this into E tier. So we have this interesting palladium dimer complex. And so sometimes when you're working with transition metals, you can form transition metal bonds. And so here we have a palladium-palladium single bond. Additionally, it's worth noting that each of these palladiums are palladium-1 species, which is pretty uncommon for palladium. You typically think of palladium-0, palladium-2, palladium-4, but in this case we have a palladium-1 dimer species. And this has been used by the Schoenbeck group for cross-coupling chemistry. So I think seeing the bridging iodide ligands too is also a little bit cursed, so it's not like one of them just has all the negative charge given to it. They're actually sharing both of the iodides. And some similar compounds have been prepared with trifluoromethylthiolate as well as bromide derivatives. So definitely a more interesting compound. Not too cursed, but definitely interesting. So we can put it into D tier. Now here we have this thiomolybdic acid. So thiomolybdic acid is used for the treatment of Wilson's disease, which is a rare disease where the body accumulates too much copper and you can't get rid of it fast enough. And so the reason it works so well is this just forms a really stable complex with copper, and it helps clear copper from the body. It's also been examined for some use in cancer treatment. So definitely an interesting compound. Not too cursed, but it does have 4 sulfurs on it. So, I'm tempted to put it in S tier. But, we're trying to be as straight line as possible here and really put the noteworthy compounds in S tier. So I'm going to put it in B tier. Now here's an interesting one, dinitrogen pentoxide. So dinitrogen pentoxide is just dehydrated nitric acid. It's pretty good as an oxidizer. As you can see, there's a lot of oxygens in there. It can be used potentially for rocket fuel, although it's a really potent one. So let's say probably A tier or B tier. I mean, let's put it in B tier. Again, if we're comparing it with a noble gas inside of a fullerene, that's pretty lame in comparison. So we'll put it in B tier. Now, another interesting one that you might disagree with is tetraphosphorus decoxide, aka P2O5. In this case, it forms a tetramer. Most of the time it's a tetramer, but it's easier to just say P2O5 because that's like its empirical formula. So P2O5, useful as a dehydrating agent. If you need to get rid of an equivalent of water in reaction, you could use P2O5 sometimes. So for instance, if you wanted to make dinitrogen pentoxide, you could do that with P2O5. Now it's not that cursed, but all those phosphoruses are really unhappy that they don't have water connected to them. So this will react with water very vigorously. Not super duper cursed, so we'll put it into F tier. Okay, so another interesting one is ammonium dinitramide. So this can be used as a potential oxidizer for rocket fuel. I don't think it's seen too much actual use, although it is a promising compound. It's definitely cool to see 3 nitrogens in a row and not be an azide. And so I think for that reason, we're going to have to put it into S tier. This is like an oxidized azide, which is a little bit terrifying. Now here's an interesting one, cacodyl. Cacodyl is an interesting compound, and it's found in something known as Cadet's fuming liquid. So it's definitely toxic because it produces, volatile arsenic derivatives. It's prepared using arsenic trioxide as well as acetic acid. So this compound's somewhat cursed. We can put it into A tier because it has an arsenic-arsenic bond, which is like an analog of hydrazine, and that's pretty terrifying. Now, one of the coolest ones on here has to be this tetraxenon gold species. So this tetraxenon gold species has been prepared using gold trifluoride, as well as xenon in the presence of HF. Super duper crazy looking compound. I think this one definitely has to go in S tier because it's both got gold and xenon, 2 elements that we typically think of as noble, being wanting to be neutral. Although in this case we have the xenon partially positive and the gold partially negative. Just the net charge will still be positive, so it's really like the gold has the positive charge, but nonetheless, it's something that can be prepared in equilibrium with other species. So an interesting compound nonetheless. Another interesting one is dicobalt octacarbonyl. So dicobalt octacarbonyl can be useful for the activation of alkynes, amongst other things. You occasionally see it used, but oftentimes it can be challenging to remove the cobalt from the alkyne if you're using it as like a quote-unquote protecting group. So this has a cobalt-cobalt bond. I think that's pretty cool. I also like that it's really hard to look at this and know what you're talking about because there's carbon monoxide connected to the cobalt. And so you just see CO, CO, and it's like, okay, it's a little bit overwhelming to look at. So a little bit cursed. I think we can put it into C tier. I mean, there's a lot of C's in that molecule, so I think that's relatively fair. Now, another interesting one is borazine. And again, you might be wondering, how useful is borazine? And the answer is, well, it depends. You can make boron nitride with it, but it seems like there's a lot of other ways to make that, although some inorganic chemists have looked at chemistry of this. I don't think borazine is that cursed because it just looks like boron mixed with, ammonia. It's not too cool. I think we could be a little bit rougher on that and put that into E tier. Now, we have a couple interesting ones left. We have uranocene, we have rhodium acetate, we have diborane, and we have leucite. So the last one we have is also C2N14. C2N14 we briefly talked about in a previous episode with Tom from Explosions in Fire. If you haven't checked out that episode, I'd encourage you to do so right now. And this compound is very energetic. I don't think it's seen any actual application because it's only been prepared in a relatively small scale, although you look at that and there's a lot of nitrogens in a row there. It's definitely an appealing looking molecule, and I think we're going to have to put it right into A tier. And since it's got so many azo groups, I think that's appropriate. Now, diborane. Diborane is really interesting because it's usually the first example used to teach students that ligands can sometimes bridge two molecules. So in this case, we have like one atom, a hydride, that bridges both borons. It doesn't have to just be bound to one thing. Even something like hydrogen with the 2 electrons it has can be bridged between 2 molecules, and so that's a little bit interesting. Now, diborane has a lot of synthetic applications, and when you compare it to the other ones, I just don't think it's quite that cursed, but we can put it into B tier because having the hydride shared between 2 borons is still a little bit cursed. Now, uranocene is a uranium sandwich. I think any chemistry with uranium is inherently interesting because it's got uranium in it, and most of us would be too afraid to work with that. And in this case, I think it's the most studied 8-pi system for sandwich complexes. So it's pretty cool looking. I think uranocene can go into B tier because it's a little bit, or no, let's be more harsh. We can put it into D tier because there's plenty of sandwich complexes that exist, and this is just a bigger one. Now, that being said, it is an actinide, so that's kind of cool. Seeing an actinide sandwich complex, definitely pretty sweet. So we have 2 left. We have leucite. Leucite is actually a chemical warfare agent. It's something not super duper friendly. It's used as a blistering agent. It's definitely a terrible compound, and for that reason it's cursed on its own, but because we're looking at like structural cursedness, I think we could be like a little bit harsher on it. It's got chloride in 2 different contexts, both as an arsenic-chlorine bond, which is scary to me, but it also has like a vinyl chloride. So this one's a little bit more organic, so I don't think we can count this one too high, and because it's F'd a lot of people up, we can put it into F tier. Now, last but not least, we have rhodium-2 acetate. Now, I kind of don't like rhodium-2 acetate. It has a rhodium-rhodium triple bond, which is kind of cursed, but I think it's overused in synthesis. I think people take a lot of diazo groups and they make their carbines using rhodium acetate, but rhodium's a little bit expensive. So it's definitely useful. It's a useful way to generate carbines. You often see a little bit unimpressive chemistry done with it, but nonetheless, it's got a rhodium-rhodium triple bond. I think that's kind of cool, and so I can put that into A tier. So hopefully you've enjoyed this tier list. I'd encourage you to leave a like and subscribe, and check out some other videos from the channel. I hope you have a great day. I often think back at how we figured out which one was delicious, which one made someone sick, which one killed you, and which one made you see God for a week. Now here we have this thiomolybdic acid. So thiomolybdic acid is used for the treatment of Wilson's disease, which is a rare disease where the body accumulates too much copper and you can't get rid of it fast enough. And so the reason it works so well is this just forms a really stable complex with copper, and it helps clear copper from the body. It's also been examined for some use in cancer treatment. So definitely an interesting compound. Not too cursed, but it does have 4 sulfurs on it. So, I'm tempted to put it in S tier. But, we're trying to be as straight line as possible here and really put the noteworthy compounds in S tier. So I'm going to put it in B tier. Now here's an interesting one, dinitrogen pentoxide. So dinitrogen pentoxide is just dehydrated nitric acid. It's pretty good as an oxidizer. As you can see, there's a lot of oxygens in there. It can be used potentially for rocket fuel, although it's a really potent one. So let's say probably A tier or B tier. I mean, let's put it in B tier. Again, if we're comparing it with a noble gas inside of a fullerene, that's pretty lame in comparison. So we'll put it in B tier. Now, another interesting one that you might disagree with is tetraphosphorus decoxide, aka P2O5. In this case, it forms a tetramer. Most of the time it's a tetramer, but it's easier to just say P2O5 because that's like its empirical formula. So P2O5, useful as a dehydrating agent. If you need to like get rid of an equivalent of water in reaction, you could use P2O5 sometimes. So for instance, like if you wanted to make dinitrogen pentoxide, you could do that with P2O5. Now it's not that cursed, but all those phosphoruses are really unhappy that they don't have water connected to them. So this will react with water very vigorously. Not super duper cursed, so we'll put it into F tier. Okay, so another interesting one is ammonium dinitramide. So this can be used as a potential oxidizer for rocket fuel. I don't think it's seen too much actual use, although it is a promising compound. It's definitely cool to see 3 nitrogens in a row and not be an azide. And so I think for that reason, we're going to have to put it into S tier. This is like an oxidized azide, which is a little bit terrifying. Now here's an interesting one, cacodyl. Cacodyl is an interesting compound, and it's found in something known as Cadet's fuming liquid. So it's definitely toxic because it produces, volatile arsenic derivatives. It's prepared using arsenic trioxide as well as acetic acid. So this compound's somewhat cursed. We can put it into A tier because it has an arsenic-arsenic bond, which is like an analog of hydrazine, and that's pretty terrifying. Now, one of the coolest ones on here has to be this tetraxenon gold species. So this tetraxenon gold species has been prepared using gold trifluoride, as well as xenon in the presence of HF. Super duper crazy looking compound. I think this one definitely has to go in S tier because it's both got gold and xenon, 2 elements that we typically think of as noble, being like wanting to be neutral. Although in this case we have the xenon partially positive and the gold partially negative. Just the net charge will still be positive, so it's really like the gold has the positive charge, but nonetheless, it's something that can be prepared in equilibrium with other species. So an interesting compound nonetheless. Another interesting one is dicobalt octacarbonyl. So dicobalt octacarbonyl can be useful for the activation of alkynes, amongst other things. You occasionally see it used, but oftentimes it can be challenging to remove the cobalt from the alkyne if you're using it as like a quote-unquote protecting group. So this has a cobalt-cobalt bond. I think that's pretty cool. I also like that it's really hard to look at this and know what you're talking about because there's carbon monoxide connected to the cobalt. And so you just see CO, CO, and it's like, okay, it's a little bit overwhelming to look at. So a little bit cursed. I think we can put it into C tier. I mean, there's a lot of C's in that molecule, so I think that's relatively fair. Now, another interesting one is borazine. And again, you might be wondering, how useful is borazine? And the answer is, well, it depends. You can make boron nitride with it, but it seems like there's a lot of other ways to make that, although some inorganic chemists have looked at chemistry of this. I don't think borazine is that cursed because it just looks like boron mixed with, ammonia. It's not too cool. I think we could be a little bit rougher on that and put that into E tier. Now, we have a couple interesting ones left. We have uranocene, we have rhodium acetate, we have diborane, and we have leucite. So the last one we have is also C2N14. C2N14 we briefly talked about in a previous episode with Tom from Explosions in Fire. If you haven't checked out that episode, I'd encourage you to do so right now. And this compound is very energetic. I don't think it's seen any actual application because it's only been prepared in a relatively small scale, although you look at that and there's a lot of nitrogens in a row there. It's definitely an appealing looking molecule, and I think we're going to have to put it right into A tier. And since it's got so many azo groups, I think that's appropriate. Now, diborane. Diborane is really interesting because it's usually the first example used to teach students that ligands can sometimes bridge 2 molecules. So in this case, we have like one atom, a hydride, that bridges both borons. It doesn't have to just be bound to one thing. Even something like hydrogen with the 2 electrons it has can be bridged between 2 molecules, and so that's a little bit interesting. Now, diborane has a lot of synthetic applications, and when you compare it to the other ones, I just don't think it's quite that cursed, but we can put it into B tier because having the hydride shared between two boranes is still a little bit cursed. Now, uranocene is a uranium sandwich. I think any chemistry with uranium is inherently interesting because it's got uranium in it, and most of us would be too afraid to work with that. And in this case, I think it's the most studied 8-pi system for sandwich complexes. So it's pretty cool looking. I think uranocene can go into B tier because it's a little bit, or no, let's be more harsh. We can put it into D tier because there's plenty of sandwich complexes that exist, and this is just a bigger one. Now, that being said, it is an actinide, so that's kind of cool. Seeing an actinide sandwich complex, definitely pretty sweet. So we have 2 left. We have lewisite. Lewisite is actually a chemical warfare agent. It's something not super duper friendly. It's used as a blistering agent. It's definitely a terrible compound, and for that reason, it's cursed on its own. But because we're looking at like structural cursedness, I think we could be like a little bit harsher on it. It's got chloride in 2 different contexts, both as an arsenic-chlorine bond, which is scary to me, but it also has like a vinyl chloride. So this one's a little bit more organic, so I don't think we can count this one too high. And because it's F'd a lot of people up, we can put it into F tier. Now, last but not least, we have rhodium-2 acetate. Now, I kind of don't like rhodium-2 acetate. It has a rhodium-rhodium triple bond, which is kind of cursed. But I think it's overused in synthesis. I think people take a lot of diazo groups and they make their carbines using rhodium acetate, but rhodium's a little bit expensive. So it's definitely useful. It's a useful way to generate carbines. You often see a little bit unimpressive chemistry done with it, but nonetheless, it's got a rhodium-rhodium triple bond. I think that's kind of cool, and so I can put that into A tier. So hopefully you've enjoyed this tier list. I'd encourage you to leave a like and subscribe, and check out some other videos from the channel. I hope you have a great day. I often think back at how we figured out which one was delicious, which one made someone sick, which one killed you, and which one made you see God for a week.
If you clicked on this video, you must be in a sour mood. If you weren't before, I'm sure you are now. Acids make things taste sour, but you wouldn't ever want to taste a superacid. Superacids are these crazy strong acids that yeet molecules apart because they protonate things which you wouldn't typically think of as bases. You've heard of methane before, CH4. Carbons can only have 4 bonds, right? Wrong! Some of these acids are so strong that they can even protonate methane to CH5+. Traditionally, a superacid is defined as anything that's stronger than sulfuric acid, although this is a matter of semantics. Whether or not it's a superacid depends on what your defining criteria are. Sulfuric acid is pretty strong and it can catalyze a lot of different reactions. The pKa of acids is typically solvent dependent, but I'm just going to give an example for each one here. Sulfuric acid has a pK of 2.8. It's a really strong acid, and it has 2 OH groups. That means both of them can act as acids. However, only the first acid is a superacid. When sulfuric acid is used as a strong acid, it's because it's protonating things that don't normally want to be protonated. You can use sulfuric acid in tons and tons of reactions in organic chemistry, but because it's not a very strong superacid, I think we're going to have to be a little bit more harsh. Sulfuric acid, you can go right into D tier. The one nice thing about sulfuric acid is it's a liquid that you can handle, and it's very easy to make and get available. So that's the only thing going in sulfuric acid's favor. Overall, it's just not that strong of an acid. Not compared to some of the ones on this list anyway. One of the things you can do to sulfuric acid, though, is mix it with sulfur trioxide, and that makes what's known as oleum. Oleum also can be referred to as fuming sulfuric acid, as when you open it, it fumes. It doesn't fume as much as pure sulfur trioxide, which is absolutely terrifying. It instantly turns black because it's forming pyrosulfuric acid. You usually only see oleum used in these really old syntheses that really old chemists used to do, and for that reason, I think we can start calling oleum boomer's acid. Because the oleum forms a complex between the sulfuric acid and the sulfur trioxide, forming pyrosulfuric acid, this becomes such a strong acid that it can even protonate sulfuric acid. So oleum is clearly a better superacid than sulfuric acid. It can catalyze all sorts of interesting reactions, but it fumes and it's pretty scary to work with. So oleum's pretty decent. I think we can put it into like C tier. It's definitely better than sulfuric acid, but there's some other ones on here that are definitely going to be ranked higher than oleum is. The next superacid is fluorosulfuric acid. This one's a little bit terrifying to look at because it's literally made by treating sulfur trioxide with HF. That's right, dissolving bodies HF. That's scary acid. Fluorosulfuric acid has a pK of -10. That's a very, very strong acid. And this compound is a liquid which can also be used for all sorts of acid-mediated reactions. Believe it or not, this is highly toxic. Who could have guessed? This stuff is pretty terrifying to work with. It only has a boiling point of 165, which is pretty low. And I have never worked with this, nor do I ever have the desire to work with this. Fluorosulfuric acid, you can go into B tier for, boy, I think I'm gonna die. Now what can happen is you can start mixing these with each other and you start getting some crazy stuff happen. Sometimes you can mix the two chemicals, sometimes you have to just take inspiration from one chemical and apply it to the other. But one of the things that you can do is you can mix fluorosulfuric acid with antimony pentafluoride. This forms a mixture known as magic acid. Magic acid was something discovered by George Olah, and he had this demo at a Christmas party where he showed his grad students that he could dissolve a candle with it. That's right, this is such a strong acid that it will protonate the alkanes in a candle. You can also do all sorts of chemistry with it. It's a very strong acid, so that means it's good for chemical reactions. But the fact that it can protonate alkanes is just mind-boggling. In fact, you can even protonate methane with this. Methane, innocent methane, CH4, now it's CH5+. You can tell your chemistry teacher the next time you accidentally draw a pentavalent carbon atom, hey, actually, George Olah could do it. He won a Nobel Prize. So maybe instead of giving me a 0 on this quiz, I should actually get an 11 out of 10. Thank you very much. Magic acid, this is going to go right into S tier. Is it practical to handle? Absolutely not. I would not want to handle magic acid ever, but it's a very strong acid. If you can protonate methane, you have to go into S tier. Plus, I mean, both of these have an S in them, so that's also appropriate. We also have fluoroantimonic acid. This is another superacid, similar acid strength. I didn't mention that the pK of magic acid is so high that it's hard to measure, and you have to start doing these dumb chemistry explanations to even try and articulate how acidic they are. If you stop being able to use pKa's under traditional senses, I don't think that that's very useful for most people, so I'm not even going to go into weird Hammett acidity parameters. You don't need to know about that. Fluoroantimonic acid, though. This is another crazy strong one. It's made by mixing HF and antimony pentafluoride, also terrifying, and this one's also capable of protonating methane. One of the cool things you can do with this is if you have like an alkane such as isobutane, you can just protonate the CH and make the tert butyl carbocation and hydrogen gas. So this is so acidic, it will protonate one of the hydrogens of the alkane and make hydrogen gas. That is terrifying. Right into S tier. Here we have one of my favorite superacids, fluoroboric acid. Oftentimes this is drawn as HBF4, and the nice thing about this one is it's commercially available as a solution in diethyl ether. This just protonates the diethyl ether, and that forms a more stable complex, and that prevents the HF from being liberated and completely destroying your glassware. HF hates glass. If you ever put HF in glass, it'll etch it. So HBF4, it's a strong acid, but it's not overwhelming. When you add it to stuff, unless you have a base in there that's like really easily protonated, it's normally pretty tame when you quench stuff with it. This is one of those like, you just add it in, you get a color change, nothing crazy happens. It's not one of those which reactions where every single drop is making you question why you even went into chemistry. Fluoroboric acid has a pKa of minus 0.4, at least in water, but it's still a superacid, even though it might not follow the definition of being more acidic than sulfuric acid. This one's really convenient to handle. This would be my superacid of choice if I was doing most chemical reactions. And so for that reason, I'm going to put it into A tier. It's not as strong of an acid as these other ones, but it's very useful and it's A-okay with me. What's not A-okay though is perchloric acid. This is another boomer acid because it used to be used a lot in the past. Perchloric acid is just made by protonating perchlorate with sulfuric acid and then distilling off the perchloric acid. However, the downside of perchloric acid is a lot of perchlorates are explosive because that chlorine does not want to be chlorine with 4 oxygens connected to it. It wants to be chloride. So it will give its oxygen away very readily. It's a potent oxidizer. A lot of the time you'll have safety training to tell you specifically not to work with perchloric acid, and that's because it explodes stuff. Now, unfortunately, it has a really low pKa of minus 15, so this is a really useful acid. It's actually pretty good, especially considering how easy it is to make perchlorate electrochemically. So for that reason, I think we're gonna have to put perchlorate in like C tier. It's a really good acid, but it makes things go boom, which if you're working in the lab, you do not want things to go boom. It also makes sense. C for perchloric. The next acid here is triflic acid. This one might remind you of sulfuric acid, as well as fluorosulfuric acid. The difference here is triflic acid is less volatile. It has a boiling point of 162 degrees, but this is still a terrifyingly strong acid. During my research, I was working with this to protonate this complex I was working with, and every single drop would go into the solvent as the solvent's instantly refluxing from the heat of the reaction produced when this protonates stuff. This is a very strong acid, and when they ship it to you, it's stored in ampules. Glass ampules are just sealed, they're completely in glass, and that prevents any moisture or any other undesired reactions from happening. Now the problem is, if you get 100 grams of this in an ampule, you're not going to use 100 grams all at once in all likelihood, so you have to store it in something. So basically, because this is a superacid, it will also protonate alkanes. So even if you have a cap that's made of like polyethylene or polypropylene, eventually it cracks and breaks because this is a superacid. It will protonate the crap out of anything. So every time I use this, I would store it in a bottle, and after a month or so, I would just have to replace the cap on my bottle because it would get destroyed. Even though I would choose the most inert caps with a Teflon liner, didn't matter. It would get protonated because superacids are no joke. This is a very strong reagent, and I would not recommend working with this unless you're really well trained. Triflic acid is cool, but when you add it to stuff, it's very exothermic. I think this one can probably go into A tier, or why don't we put it between A tier and B tier, because it's worse than fluoroboric acid, but better than fluorosulfuric acid. Actually, I know what we can do. A few of you have complained that I don't use all the tiers in these tier lists, so why don't we do this? We'll move everything down a tier, even though we won't have any more C for chloric. This next acid is a little bit unconventional. Normally when you have an acid, you have an H+ that's fully liberated. You might have an OH that's just dying to give its H away. But triflitic acid is a carbon acid. This poor carbon has 3 trifluoromethane sulfonyl groups connected to it, and that's just pulling the electron density away from that carbon. It's dying to be an anion, and so that makes this H really acidic. This has a pKa of minus 18.6, which makes it one of the strongest acids on here, and occasionally you'll see it used, but it's still a pretty obscure acid amongst organic synthesis. So this can be used as a strong acid. It was reported in 1987, but it still hasn't seen a ton of use. So for that reason, I think we can put it into like B tier, because it's a very strong acid, it just hasn't been used very much yet. But it's very strong, don't get me wrong. I haven't mentioned it at this point, but if something goes up or down a unit on the pKa scale, let's say we go from -2 to -3, that's 10 times stronger of an acid. So something that has a pKa of 0, compared to something that has a pKa of -6, is a lot less acidic, because something with a pKa of -6 is 10 to the 6 times more acidic. That's literally 1,000,000 times more acidic. So for reference, hydrochloric acid has a pKa of -6.3. That means that triflitic acid is 12.3 pKa units more acidic than hydrochloric acid. That means that it's 1,000,000,000,000 times more acidic than hydrochloric acid. Just let that sink in for a minute. This is 1,000,000,000,000 times more acidic than stomach acid. That's crazy. Next we have bis-triflumidic acid. This one's a little bit more common. This is a nitrogen-containing acid. Same sort of deal as the last one. These 2 sulfonyl groups just suck the electron density away from the nitrogen. The nitrogen's just dying to be an anion. This one's often used in the preparation of various inorganic salt complexes as it's a fairly non-reactive counterion. Inorganic chemists want to study stuff, and if their complexes are decomposing, they can't study it. And if they can't study it, it's hard to get grants. So for that reason, they're going to be using anions that aren't very reactive, such as the bis-triflamide anion. The pKa of bis-triflaminic acid is roughly minus 12, at least in dichloroethane, but in acetonitrile, its pKa is close to 0. Different solvents have drastically different effects on pKa's, so a really low pKa in one solvent doesn't mean that it'll be as low in another solvent, because it depends on a number of factors. So bis-triflaminic acid, it's useful, but oftentimes you have to prepare this yourself. You can't just buy it always, at least for lab work. So for this reason, I think we'll put it into C tier. It could be commercially available to some people, but those people are forking out a lot of money for this stuff. We have 2 acids left. Let's start with this carborane acid. This is just one of many different carboranes that exist, and carboranes are very acidic. These things possess pKa's well below minus 20, and that means that they're crazy strong acids. It's a bit hard to see what this looks like here, so here's a video of what this actually looks like when it's rotating. This will look pretty cursed to you because this carbon is connected to 5 borons and an H. There is no way that that proton wants to stay on there. It is dying to leave. And boron normally forms 3 bonds, and each of these borons also has 5 bonds plus a 6th bond to the chlorine. This is crazy, crazy cursed. Superacids are often studied by people who get grants to study them. That might sound kind of dumb to non-scientists, but that's more or less the way this works. And believe it or not, some carboranes are being studied as potential motifs to include in drugs in the future. I sure hope that none of those are superacids, otherwise we could have a bad time. These things have been proposed as catalysts for hydrocarbon cracking, as superacids can protonate alkanes, which I mentioned earlier. This is going to also have to go right into S tier. Last but not least, we have this pentacyanocyclopentadiene. This is another extremely cursed looking molecule, and it's another carbon acid. This is our 3rd carbon acid on the tier list, and this one's not as well known as the others. This one has an estimated aqueous pKa of minus 11, and it was only prepared as a free. Welcome back, I'm That Chemist, and today we're going to be figuring out which chemical is the most risky. So when you're working with chemicals, there's a lot of risks. Let's see which ones are the most risky. Let's start off with tert-butyl hydroperoxide. Tert-butyl hydroperoxide has a rating of 444. That's its NFPA safety rating. It's commonly used as an oxidizing agent in organic chemistry. It has great solubility in organic solvents, and as long as it's stored in solution, it's pretty stable. However, if you try and ship a solution that's more than 90% tert-butyl hydroperoxide, it's extremely unstable, and it's actually forbidden by the US Department of Transportation. If you get this liquid on your skin or eyes, it causes severe burns, it may explode in a fire, and if it's distilled dry, it can explode. This chemical is way scarier than I originally thought. I've seen it used in a lot of papers, but I've never used it myself personally. As a rule of thumb in chemistry, if you see a peroxide which has a COOH linker, that means that it probably poses some risks. So tert-butyl hydroperoxide, this can go right into S tier. Easy, no problems. Now let's talk about cyanogen. Cyanogen has a rating of 442. It was actually discovered by Gay-Lussac, who we've discussed in the graduated cylinder video. If you haven't checked out that video, I'd encourage you to check it out. I did a lot of research for that video, and if you haven't seen it, I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy it because it's a really good story. This chemical is synthesized industrially through the oxidation of hydrogen cyanide. You might be thinking, hydrogen cyanide's already pretty bad. Can we make something else really bad with it? Yes, apparently we can. It can be converted to cyanogen. Now, not only is this something that we produce from cyanide, but it's something that's been found in the tail of Halley's Comet. It was also used historically by photographers in the form of cyanogen soap to remove silver stains from their hands. So somehow this was safe enough to use as soap, and I find that extremely surprising. In addition to all of its safety concerns, it produces the 2nd hottest known natural flame after carbon subnitride, and it burns at a temperature at over 4,500 degrees Celsius when it burns in the presence of oxygen. Hey, by the way, it's also explosive in the presence of oxygen. This is a pretty scary chemical. If anyone was working in the lab with cyanogen, I would be terrified. This probably also belongs in S tier, but because it only has a rating of 2 for how unstable it is, we're going to put it into A tier. Now right there, I just mentioned that it was unstable. So what do these NFPA ratings actually mean? Well, I'll put a graphic on screen now, and the NFPA rating explains how dangerous chemicals are in terms of health, flammability, and instability. These are somewhat subjective, and the ratings that you get from one vendor to another might vary. But in terms of health, if it's a 4, it means exposure can be lethal once. If it's a 3, it means it could cause serious or permanent injury. If it's 2, it could cause temporary incapacitation or injury that lasts. If it has a rating of 1, it could cause significant irritation, and if it's 0, there's no hazard at all. Now, in terms of flammability, if it has a rating of 4, it can vaporize and burn easily at normal temperatures. If it's a 3, it can be ignited under almost all ambient temperatures. If it's 2, it needs to be heated to higher temperatures if you want it to burn. And if it's a 1, it means that preheating is necessary before ignition can occur. Now, in terms of instability, this is basically how likely it is to explode. And if it's a 4, basically you want to run away as quickly as possible. If it's a 3, it might be able to explode if exposed to high temperature or shock. If it's a 2, a big chemical change or high temperature or pressure could cause it to go. And if it's a 1, it's normally pretty stable, but maybe it's unstable at high temperatures. So essentially, if there's a 4 in any of these categories, this chemical is sketchy AF, and you need to treat it with a lot of care and respect. If there's a 4 in more than one of these categories, you need to be extremely careful, like so careful, because one mistake could make everything go really badly really quickly. If it has a 4 in all 3, you probably shouldn't work with it ever, unless you have a lot of safety protocols in place and you're prepared for all 3 things to go wrong. Just for reference, if something has a 4 in each, that means when you're exposed, you can die, or you can die in the fire, or you can die from the explosion. And so an exploding, flammable, toxic mess is super scary. So back to the tier list. Propargyl bromide. Propargyl bromide is frequently used in organic synthesis. It has a rating of 334. It's useful for introducing propargyl groups. It's a good electrophile. Sometimes if you want to have a reaction work really well, propargyl bromide will be used. Although it's also a potent lacrimator. And what that means is it'll make you tear and it will irritate the sinuses and all mucous membranes. I thought that this was overstated, but then I worked with it a couple times and it's no joke. It is very offensive to your face, and you definitely want to work with this in a fume hood and only within a fume hood. It's also a potent alkylating agent, so it's definitely toxic. It has a flash point of 18 degrees Celsius, and it can also explode as a 3% mixture in air. Guess what? Also, certain metals cause it to explode, so that's great, and it's shock sensitive. Now, you might be wondering, what is the flash point? The flash point of a material is the lowest liquid temperature at which, under certain conditions which are standardized, the liquid is able to give off enough vapor that it is capable of forming a flammable mixture with air. So if something's above its flash point and there's a spark, it will ignite, so you need to be careful. So propargyl bromide's a little bit scary. I've worked with it in the lab without too many issues, and because it only has a rating of 334, I think we can probably put this one into C tier. Now, arsine gas. Arsine is an arsenic derivative, and it has a rating of 442. You might be thinking, oh, this only has a 2 in the instability category. That's not this bad. A 4 and a 4 is still super scary. Almost nobody in organic chemistry works with arsenic derivatives anymore because they're really toxic. And arsine is a gas. It's a confirmed human carcinogen, and it's also acutely lethal. As a result of exposure, you can get kidney damage, and this can be long-lasting. Guess what? It also causes pneumonia. The way arsine is toxic is it attacks the hemoglobin of red blood cells, and this causes the body to break them down. When present in air, arsine spontaneously reacts with oxygen, and people thought about using it as a chemical warfare agent, but it was never used because it was too flammable. So arsine goes into S tier. You might be thinking, how risky is arsine? It doesn't even explode. If anyone in the lab I was working in was working with arsine gas, I wouldn't even work in that lab. I would leave for a day, maybe a week, maybe till they were done their research. That is too risky for me. I just paused there briefly to respond to a text message from Hamilton Morris. By the way, I recorded a podcast episode with Hamilton Morris. You can find that on his Patreon now, and it should be coming up on his YouTube channel in the near future. I'll include a link to that in the description if you want to check it out. So the next chemical is monomethylhydrazine. Monomethylhydrazine has a rating of 434, and it's used as a rocket propellant in conjunction with some oxidizers. So this is a fuel. It's also been used as a propellant for orbital maneuvering systems and the reaction control system in NASA space shuttles. You might be surprised to know that derivatives of this are found in some fungi, such as in the mushrooms of Gyromitra, which I've actually discussed in a video about mycotoxins. I'll include a link to that in the description, and if you're interested in chemistry of fungi, it's a video you're not going to want to miss. There's this molecule called gyromitrin, and when the fungi are cooked, it releases monomethylhydrazine. The mushrooms become edible after cooking, but if you breathe in the monomethylhydrazine as it cooks, that could be game over for you. And if you handle the mushrooms without protecting your skin, that could also be game over. This is a really scary chemical. In addition to its severe toxicity, it's extremely flammable, which makes sense because it's rocket fuel. It has a really low flash point of -8 degrees Celsius, and it can explode as a 2.5% mixture in air. So monomethylhydrazine, I think, also belongs into S tier, because if someone was working with that in the lab, you wouldn't want to be anywhere near them. In retrospect, I think the tert-butyl hydroperoxide probably belongs in A tier, because people could work with that in a lab and I wouldn't be as concerned, even though it has the highest rating possible of 444. This is still really dangerous. All of these are really dangerous. Just because something's in a slightly lower tier doesn't mean it's not bad at all. It's still really bad. Let's talk about diazomethane. Diazomethane has a rating of 433. It's a really convenient methylating agent because when you use it, the only byproduct is nitrogen gas, and that's really convenient. You don't have to do anything with that nitrogen gas other than give it room to escape. Now, if it reacts too quickly, maybe that could be an explosion. It's also extremely acutely toxic. It could be chronically toxic as well, but its acute toxicity outweighs its chronic toxicity. There's been several deaths reported associated with diazomethane. In one instance, a laboratory worker consumed a hamburger near their fume hood where they were generating large amounts of diazomethane. And 4 days later, this person died from fulminating pneumonia. Don't eat in the labs, and especially don't eat anywhere near chemicals, especially ones that could cause fulminating pneumonia, for goodness sakes. You might think, that's pretty bad. That's a good enough reason not to work with it. Well, it turns out that it can also explode in contact with sharp edges of containers, such as in glassware. Even if there's a scratch in the glassware, it could detonate. So that's pretty spooky. Most of the time when people work with diazomethane nowadays, they work with a derivative called TMS diazomethane. But this one still has several of the risks associated with diazomethane, and there